Chapter 1901. Earlier, his attention was solely focused on the Sun Saint energy in his body. Therefore, he had overlooked his soul that had changed into that of a divine saint stage powerhouse. He could also clearly sense that his spiritual energy had become stronger. At this moment, his spiritual energy seemed as though it was in a state of restlessness before it charged toward his left eye. What's going on? Duan Lingtian was shocked when he failed to control his spiritual energy. It's the strange pupil. Soon after, Duan Lingtian discovered the cause of it. His left eye was no longer similar to a human's eyes. His left eye had merged with the unique eye of a one-eyed devil vulture, and he had obtained some extraordinary abilities from it. However, the strength of those abilities depended on the strength of his spiritual energy. As Duan Lingtian gained more techniques that made him stronger than what he should be at his cultivation base and defeated opponents stronger than him, the strange pupil gradually became less and less important. Duan Lingtian merely used it to look at things in the distance. However, today, something seemed to be happening to the strange pupil. Without knowing how much time had passed, Duan Lingtian discovered his left eye growing hot before the uncontrollable and restless spiritual energy suddenly disappeared from his left eye. At this moment, Duan Lingtian felt as though his left eye was stripped of its ability. What shocked him even more was the spiritual energy that had disappeared from his left eye seemed to have fused with his body and the 99 saint veins. Following that, he discovered the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique had begun to circulate on their own. To be more precise, it was the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique that had undergone a transformation in the Dragon Clan's Saint Land, the Dragon Cleansing Pool. However, it was strange because it did not circulate his saint energy. Instead, the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique had actually circulated his spiritual energy. I can do that to my spiritual energy? Duan Lingtian was dumbfounded. This was his first time seeing his spiritual energy being circulated. He did not even hear of such things before this. What's going on? What's happening? Duan Lingtian was confused. As time passed, Duan Lingtian could also clearly sense his spiritual energy was longer pure as it was circulated by the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique circulated. There seemed to be something else mixed in it. However, due to the uncontrollable state of his spiritual energy, he could not discern what it was. Nonetheless, he had a feeling the thing mixed with his spiritual energy was not harmful. He did not know much time had passed. It felt like a century, but it also felt like a mere moment. After a while, Duan Lingtian discovered the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique had stopped circulating, and his uncontrollable spiritual energy had fused back with his soul. At the moment the spiritual energy fused with his soul, Duan Lingtian felt momentarily displaced. The feeling was similar to an out-of-body experience. When he regained his senses, he discovered he had regained control of his spiritual energy. The current spiritual energy is indeed different. Although it's the spiritual energy of someone at the divine saint stage, there seems to be something else as well. Moreover, it seems to want to merge with the strange pupil. Shortly after, Duan Lingtian noticed something strange. Although he had regained control of his spiritual energy, it seemed to have a mind of its own. It seemed as though it wanted to surge into his left eye. In the beginning, Duan Lingtian tried to stop it. He sighed in relief when he discovered that it was still under his control even though it was in a state of restlessness. He felt better having control over his spiritual energy. Why does it have such a strange impulse? Never mind, let's see what will happen after it flows into the strange pupil. With that thought in mind, Duan Lingtian controlled the spiritual energy and let it surge into his left eye. Naturally, Duan Lingtian felt anxious during the whole process. After all, not only did he discover that his spiritual energy had changed, but it had become strange even to its master. At the instant when his spiritual energy surged into his left eye, he discovered his eye was absorbing his spiritual energy like it was absorbing rain after a long drought. As the strange pupil in his left eye absorbed his spiritual energy, Duan Lingtian began to feel a burn in his left eye. It was so hot that he gradually grew numb to it. At the same time, he had a strong urge to open his left eye. His left eye seemed to have accumulated some force and was in need of a release. What's going on? Duan Lingtian was confused. He had no idea what was happening. However, he still opened both his eyes. At the instant when he opened his eyes, Duan Lingtian discovered the sky was beginning to brighten. It was dawn. It feels like it's going to explode. Duan Lingtian's attention returned to his left eye. When Duan Lingtian tried to use his left eye to look at things, he found that not only was everything within his line of sight magnified, but there was even a focus point in the middle. It was very similar to the feeling of sniper looking through a scope. What's going on? Why do I feel as though the spiritual energy in my left eye wants to be shot out? Duan Lingtian was shocked to discover that as soon as that thought appeared in his mind, the spiritual energy in his left eye really shot out. The spiritual energy looked as though it had materialized and took the form of a dragon. The spiritual energy was headed for the center of the focus point. However, since it was aimed at the sky, it was nowhere to be found after it was shot out. That shot depleted only half of the accumulated spiritual energy. Following that, Duan Lingtian realized that the spiritual energy accumulated in the strange pupil had more than half left. Moreover, it was slowly increasing again. His spiritual energy kept surging out from his soul to his left eye to replenish the depleted energy in his left eye. Spiritual energy attack, soul attack. Then, Duan Lingtian began to suspect the spiritual energy that his left eye shot out was a kind of soul attack. Moreover, his soul attack that took the form of a dragon was extremely extraordinary. There's a fly there. Duan Lingtian's strange pupil was aiming around before it eventually settled on a fly perched on a tree in the distance. Shoot! With just a thought, Duan Lingtian's strange pupil shot out spiritual energy that took the form of a divine dragon. The spiritual energy that was only as large as a needle was aimed at the fly's head. The aim was terrifyingly accurate. At the same time, Duan Lingtian extended his divine consciousness and began to monitor the changes in the fly's body. His divine consciousness could even detect the fly's weak soul. However, as soon as his spiritual energy pierced the fly's head, Duan Lingtian discovered through his divine consciousness that the fly's soul had disappeared without a trace. Naturally, now that it had lost its soul, the fly had fallen from the tree. This is my soul attack. Duan Lingtian gasped as he discovered how terrifying his skill was. There was no way to defend against it. He could hardly imagine what would happen if his opponent had attacked him with this skill. Would he even be able to survive? Back when Duan Lingtian was still on Cloud Continent, he was already familiar with techniques under the soul attack category. For instance, the Thousand Illusions was also a soul attack. However, the Thousand Illusions technique was far from being comparable to the technique from his strange pupil. I have a feeling if I use the soul attack from my strange pupil, not even a powerhouse at the peak of the Divine Saint stage would be able to survive it. Even exemplary Saint stage powerhouses will suffer from my soul attack if they're caught off guard. Duan Lingtian could not help but gasp when he thought of this. The situation is different from what I imagined it to be. At that time, a voice rang in Duan Lingtian's ears. It shocked the distracted Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian could tell it was Elder Huo. It was as though he had seen his lifesaver when he quickly asked, Elder Huo, why did my strange pupil change so tremendously after I've broken through to the Divine Saint stage? Following that, Duan Lingtian recounted everything that had happened. Based on your words, there must be a resonance between your strange pupil and the Nine Dragons War Sovereign technique that had undergone a transformation. It also changed your spiritual energy. Your spiritual energy that uses your strange pupil to cast a soul attack should be one of the soul attack's divine abilities if I'm not mistaken. After listening to Duan Lingtian, Elder Huo said, you can treat it as your innate ability. Innate ability, like the innate ability of a peculiar demon beast, saint beast or a variant. Innate ability, Duan Lingtian was no stranger to it. He learned about it when he was on Cloud Continent. No, those are nothing more than mere spiritual secret tactics. True innate ability is an actual divine ability. It would be no weaker than a high-grade divine ability. Elder Huo said. Chapter 1902, True innate ability is an actual divine ability. It would be no weaker than a high-grade divine ability. Elder Huo's voice rang in Duan Lingtian's ears and completely changed his perception. Not only was the innate ability he learned about on Cloud Continent unrelated to divine abilities, but it was also inferior to it. He learned from Elder Huo that the innate abilities on mortal continents were not true innate abilities at all. True innate abilities were as strong as a high-grade divine ability. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath as he tried to suppress his excitement, but his voice still trembled slightly as he asked, Elder Huo, you mean, the soul attack technique from my strange pupil is my innate ability, and it's not any weaker than a high-grade divine ability? Yes, Elder Huo replied, according to your description, the strength of your innate ability can still be improved. For instance, you can condense all the accumulated spiritual energy in the strange pupil into one soul attack. The strength of your attack will be stronger in that case. Naturally, it's easier said than done. You'll still have to depend on yourself for that. Previously, I only know that the one-eyed devil vulture's eye is special. I didn't think it'll transform into something like this because it has resonated with your cultivation method. As Elder Huo spoke, he could not help but sigh. An offensive divine ability can either be a divine ability or a soul attack divine ability. The latter is an innate ability, it's impossible to make it any stronger. Soul attack divine ability is a lot stronger compared to those soul attack secret techniques. The difference between it and the soul attack secret techniques is like the difference between a high-grade divine ability and an ordinary martial art skill. Duan Lingtian stayed silent after Elder Huo finished speaking. He needed more time to process Elder Huo's words. Eventually, he reached a conclusion. He really hit the jackpot this time. In just a day and a night, not only did my cultivation base improve, but I even obtained an innate ability. How lucky! A smile appeared on Duan Lingtian's face. Currently, he desperately wanted to improve his strength. This was because he knew clearly that even if he managed to enter the fire worship sect now, unless there was a miracle, it would be difficult for him to rescue Ka and their daughter. He was not even sure if he could get far enough to see them. For this reason, every improvement in his strength was like good news to him. He had never longed so desperately to be strong as he did now. Elder Huo, earlier you said that the situation seems different from what you imagined them to be. What do you mean by that? Duan Lingtian asked after he calmed himself down. Due to his curiosity, he instantly asked Elder Huo about the changes in his strange pupil when he heard him spoke. Now that the matter was resolved, he recalled what Elder Huo had said earlier. The 4th level of 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda has been completely restored. Elder Huo's voice sounded in Duan Lingtian's ears. Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up and his body began to tremble slightly due to excitement when he heard this. The 4th level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda had been restored. This was definitely good news to Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian was so excited that his face turned red. It took a while before he managed to calm down. First, he had broken through to the Divine Saint stage. Then, he mastered a powerful soul attack that was like an innate ability. Finally, he learned that Elder Huo had finished repairing the 4th level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. All 3 were good news to him. This means I'll have a better cultivation environment in the future. The time flow in the 4th level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda is much slower than the time flow on the 3rd floor of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. 8 days inside equal to only a day in the outside world. Duan Lingtian muttered excitedly to himself. Moreover, if I meet an opponent I can't defeat, I'll be able to hide in the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. I'm afraid it's not possible to take hide in there, Elder Huo said in response to Duan Lingtian's last sentence. Why? When Duan Lingtian heard Elder Huo's words, his body that was trembling from excitement instantly stilled. His smile had also disappeared. At this moment, he realized that something was amiss. Otherwise, Elder Huo would not say such words to him at such a time. Although the 4th level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda has been repaired, the space inside is still unstable. It'll be impossible to hide in it for now, Elder Huo answered Duan Lingtian's question. How's this possible? Duan Lingtian had an expression of disbelief when he first heard Elder Huo's words. Elder Huo, are you certain? I remember you said that as long as the 4th level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda is repaired, the space inside the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda will stabilize, and I'll be able to hide in it. No matter how big of a commotion there is in the outside world, I won't be kicked out. Duan Lingtian became agitated as he spoke. Apart from having a better cultivation environment and slower time flow, he was looking forward to the stability the 4th level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda would bring to the space inside. According to what Elder Huo said previously, since the 4th level was in the middle, it would stabilize the space inside the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. At that time, when he entered Pagoda, he would not be kicked out from just a slight movement in the outside world. For this reason, he was desperate to repair the 4th level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. However, after everything he had gone through to repair the 4th level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, Elder Huo just told him the space inside the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda was still as unstable as before. He could not hide inside in times of danger. How could he accept this? As the saying went, the higher your hopes are, the harder the fall would be. This phrase described Duan Lingtian's situation perfectly. The space inside the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda is damaged when it arrived in this mundane realm. Originally, I thought the space inside the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda would stabilize as soon as I repair the 4th level. However, as I repaired the 4th level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, I realized the damage inside the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda is more than what I imagined it to be. Unless the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda is completely repaired, the space inside will never stabilize. Completely repaired? Duan Lingtian smiled bitterly when he heard Elder Huo's words. I'm afraid I don't know how long that will take. All this time, he had been finding the materials needed to repair the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. From the 1st level to the 4th level, it got harder at every level. In Duan Lingtian's opinion, even if he stood at the peak of the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land and used all the resources that were available to him, he would only be able to repair the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda up to the 6th level at most. Although I'm at the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land, I'm not even sure if I can completely repair it to the 6th level. When Duan Lingtian thought of this, his expression turned even more bitter. It seems like God has played a joke on me. I thought I might be able to use it to enter the Fire Worship Sect's Saint Land and the Enforcement Hall and rescue Ka and our daughter. After all, no one will be able to find me if I hide inside the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. Well, it seems like that's impossible now. Duan Lingtian knew very well there were no more shortcuts for him to see and rescue Ka and their daughter. He could only rely on his own hard work to do it. The path of relying on the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda had reached its end. Although things might not work in his favor even if he could hide in it, it gave him a sense of hope. Currently, he felt as though all his hopes had been snuffed out. Apart from being unable to stabilize the space inside the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, I've discovered a damage the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda had sustained while it was still in the hands of Li Jing and repaired it as well. This is an unexpected but pleasant surprise. Elder Huo continued to transmit his voice. Damage, unexpected but pleasant surprise. Duan Lingtian was puzzled. Actually, the real time flow on the 4th level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda is not 8 days inside equal to a day outside, it's only so when it was damaged. Li Jing did not bother to repair the damage since the time flow doesn't concern him. Over time, perhaps, Li Jing had even forgotten about it, Elder Huo continued saying. Li Jing was the former owner of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. He was also a legendary mythical figure in Duan Lingtian's past life. He was known as the Pagoda-bearing Heavenly King. Elder Huo, what do you mean? Does this mean that time flows even slower on the 4th level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda now that you repaired the damage? Duan Lingtian was not stupid, he knew what Elder Huo was alluding to. Yes, Elder Huo nodded before he said, the time flow on the 4th level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda is 10 days inside equal to a day outside. 10 to 1, Duan Lingtian could not help but gasp. It was obvious he was shocked. In comparison to the 3rd level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, the 3rd level was one-fold slower. Chapter 1903. Moreover, the cultivation environment on the 4th level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda was a lot better than the 3rd level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. For this reason, cultivating on the 4th level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda would be more than 1 time faster than cultivating on the 3rd level of 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. In fact, it might even be 2 to 3 times faster. There are both gains and losses. Duan Lingtian could not help but sigh, feeling a little bitter. What he had been anticipating the most was the stability of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda because it was related to his plan of saving his fiancée and daughter from the enforcement hall in the Fire Worship Sect's Saint Land. Although there were no guarantees the plan would work, it had given him hope. Now that his hope had been snuffed out, he could only rely on his strength to rescue his fiancée, Ka, and his daughter. When the sun rose from the east, the people around Duan Lingtian began to open their eyes and stop cultivating. The atmosphere turned lively very quickly. Duan Lingtian stood up and glanced at the rising sun as he muttered, the assessment should begin soon. At the same time, the discussions in his surroundings entered his ears. Do you know how we'll be assessed? Of course, I came to the Saint Sect 3 years ago for the assessment. I was selected to join the Azure Dragon Sanctum then. During the assessment, my innate talent fell short of the passing grades, and as for my strength, I barely passed it. All in all, I failed to join the sect. Since you're here again, does this mean you're feeling confident now? Of course, my current strength is not something the former me can compare to. Although I can't change my innate talent, my current strength should be enough to pull me through. It should be just enough to pass the assessment. That was the conversation between a rookie and a veteran. Soon after, Duan Lingtian's attention was caught by the discussion among 3 people. I heard that people with green spiritual roots or above won't be assessed for their strength to join the fire worship sect's 4 symbol sanctums. They would be given a passing grade immediately and become a disciple of the fire worship sect, a middle-aged man said. Based on my innate talent, my innate spiritual root is yellow at the most. I can only hope my strength will earn me more points and raise my score. I might stand a chance if that's the case, an old man replied. Finally, a young man shook his head as he said, your innate talent is quite poor. If you intend to join the fire worship sect with your innate talent, you'll need to be at the exemplary saint stage or above. I know. I've broken through to the exemplary saint stage a while ago. I hope it'll earn me enough points during the strength assessment. The old man nodded. Spiritual roots. Innate spiritual roots. Duan Lingtian frowned. He had a confused expression on his face since he did not understand what they were talking about. What was a spiritual root and an innate spiritual root? He had no idea. Elder Huo, do you know what is it? Duan Lingtian asked Elder Huo. I've never heard of it. This must be something that only the mundane realms have. Elder Huo also did not know what it was. Duan Lingtian could only ask someone else. Soon after, he shifted his gaze to the middle-aged man and asked him what they were talking about. You don't know what's an innate spiritual root? The middle-aged man was baffled when he heard Duan Lingtian's question. He looked at Duan Lingtian as though he was looking at an aberration. Is it weird that I don't know about it? Duan Lingtian was puzzled. He had a slight frown on his face. The middle-aged man thought Duan Lingtian was offended when he saw the frown on his face. He recalled the strength Duan Lingtian displayed when he killed Yang Wu, and he quickly erased the shock expression from his face. Innate spiritual root is something one is born with. However, our ancestors had only discovered the existence of spiritual roots after arriving in the upper province. The middle-aged man asked, you should know that a long time ago, there was no distinction between the upper and lower province, right? I'm from the lower province, Duan Lingtian said indifferently. You're from the lower province? The middle-aged man was surprised when he heard his words. Then, he nodded. That's the reason why you don't know about innate spiritual roots. Innate spiritual root is the spiritual root one is born with. It represents a person's innate talent in the martial Tao. He continued to say, innate spiritual roots are divided into 7 ranks that are named after the colors of the rainbow. They're the red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo and violet. Red spiritual roots represent the weakest innate talent while the violet spiritual roots represent the strongest. During the assessment of the fire worship sect's 4 symbol sanctums, people with green spiritual roots or higher don't have to participate in the strength assessment and will immediately qualify as a disciple of the sect. People with green spiritual roots usually need to have a cultivation base above the divine saint stage to have a chance of passing the assessment to become a disciple of the fire worship sect. People with yellow spiritual roots usually have to have cultivation base above the exemplary saint stage. As for people with orange spiritual roots, in theory, they would need to be above the quintessential saint stage to qualify as a disciple of fire worship sect. However, for people with orange innate spiritual roots, it would be impossible for them to break through to the quintessential saint stage unless they had a heaven-defying fortuitous encounter. The middle-aged finished speaking in one breath, causing him to almost run out of breath. He was afraid he would offend Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian understood what the innate spiritual root was after he heard the middle-aged man's explanation. How do you see one's innate spiritual root? Duan Lingtian asked the middle-aged man with a gleam in his eyes. Only powerhouses above the saint celestial stage would be able to look at their own innate spiritual roots with a soul secret technique. They can also look at others' innate spiritual roots provided the other party doesn't put up a resistance. Apart from that, it can only be seen by relying on tools, the middle-aged man said. For example, during our assessment, the black turtle sanctum will bring several spiritual pearls that contain complex formations. When we put our hands on it, it'll show our innate spiritual roots after 10 breaths. Duan Lingtian nodded as he listened to the middle-aged man's explanation before he returned to his spot. The black turtle sanctum will assess our innate talent by looking at our innate spiritual roots. The stronger one's spiritual root is, the better one would be treated. For instance, people with green innate spiritual roots or above will immediately qualify as a disciple of the fire worship sect. People with innate spiritual root below green will have to take part in the strength assessment. The lower one's innate talent is, the higher one's strength would have to be to qualify. Duan Lingtian understood why such a rule was put in place. How could it be possible for someone weak with low innate talent to join a top-tier sect like the fire worship sect? If not for the rules, what would differentiate the fire worship sect from ordinary sects? The fire worship sect was one of the 3 greatest sects in the Tao Martial Saint land. I really don't know what rank my innate spiritual root is at, however, I don't think it'll be a high rank one. Although Duan Lingtian was curious about the rank of his innate spiritual root, he knew himself very well. His innate talent might be high on Cloud Continent, but since he had arrived in the Tao Martial Saint land, he noticed most people's innate talent was really good. Especially those prodigies he met at the quasi-third-rate force, Mystical Sky Mansion. He was aware of his situation. If it was not for the help of the 7 treasures exquisite pagoda, he would not be able to surpass them so quickly and accomplish so much in such a short time. Suddenly, someone yelled, "They're here!" That instantly caught everyone's attention. Under everyone's watchful eyes, the Black Turtle Sanctum's Silver Flame Elders, Tangshan and Lian, appeared again. Although both of them appeared at almost the same time, they came from different directions. It was apparent they did not come together. 2 middle-aged men followed behind each of them. The 4 middle-aged men also wore white robes with a black turtle embroidered on it like Tangshan and Lian. The only difference was the flames on their robes were bronze. Bronze Flame Elders. Duan Lingtian and the people present on the scene instantly figured out the identities of the 4 middle-aged men. "Prepare yourselves," Tangshan said indifferently. As soon as he finished speaking, he flew up into the air and looked at everyone. As Tangshan flew up into the air, the 2 bronze flame elders who were standing behind him strode forward. They raised their arms before a dull, transparent pearl appeared before them, hovering in the air. From afar, it looked like a glass ball the size of an adult's fist. Swoosh! Lian did not say anything. He flew up into the sky as well and looked at everyone just like Tangshan. The 2 bronze flame elders who stood behind him also strode forward and took out 2 pearls. This is the spiritual pearl that can reveal one's innate spiritual root. Duan Lingtian instantly guessed the floating transparent pearls hovering before the 4 bronze flame elders had to be the soul pearls that the middle-aged man mentioned earlier. There are 2 parts to today's assessment. Your strength and innate talent will be assessed respectively. We will assess your innate talent by looking at your innate spiritual root. Tangshan said. His voice was clear and loud. It was exactly like what the middle-aged man had said. "Now, we'll begin to assess your innate talent," Tangshan said, signaling the start of the innate talent assessment. There were 4 people to a group as they stepped forward to see what rank their innate spiritual roots were. "I really don't know what rank my innate spiritual root will be." Orange. Yellow. Duan Lingtian did not dare to have high hopes. Chapter 1904. Duan Lingtian did not dare to have high hopes because he felt that his achievements were all thanks to the 7 treasures exquisite pagoda. It was not that he was being pessimistic. The time flow on the 3rd level of the 7 treasures exquisite pagoda was shockingly slow. 5 days inside equaled to only a day outside. Just by relying on that alone, his cultivation speed was 5 times faster than those who were at his level. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath before he shifted his eyes to the 4 people who were currently being assessed. He watched as they placed their hands on the spiritual pearls hovering in front of the Black Turtle Sanctum's bronze flame elders. It took about 10 breaths before the spiritual pearls began to react. Wow, 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 3 of the spiritual pearls glowed with yellow light. Wow, the final spiritual pearl glowed with orange light. That's really magical. Duan Lingtian was slightly amazed. He did not think the small spiritual pearls would be able to reveal the rank of one's innate spiritual root. Moreover, he could also sense the complex formations inside the spiritual pearls. The spiritual pearls might appear ordinary, but the formations inside were extraordinarily complex. Name. Following that, the 4 bronze flame elders from Black Turtle Sanctum began recording the names of the participants and the results of their innate talent assessment. One of the bronze flame elders looked at the old man who had an orange innate spiritual root and said indifferently, "Your innate spiritual root is merely an orange innate spiritual root. If you haven't reached the quintessential saint stage, it'll be impossible for you to pass the strength assessment." Orange spiritual root. The old man had a bitter expression on his face. It was obvious he had just learned his innate spiritual root was an orange spiritual root. Orange spiritual roots. It's impossible to reach the quintessential saint stage unless he had a fortuitous encounter. At the same time, those who had not been assessed shook their heads. The old man who learned that he merely had an orange innate spiritual root bowed respectfully at the bronze flame elders and turned around to leave. It seemed like he was aware of his own strength. His back looked gaunt and sad from afar. I hope that my spiritual root isn't an orange spiritual root, many people muttered to themselves. They were afraid their innate spiritual roots would also be an orange spiritual root. It was hard to tell what rank one's innate spiritual root was just by looking at one's strength. For example, people with orange and yellow spiritual roots would cultivate at almost the same speed before they reached the divine saint stage. The difference would grow bigger once they had broken through to the divine saint stage. People with yellow spiritual roots would be able to break through to the exemplary saint stage easily and had a good chance of breaking through to the quintessential saint stage. On the other hand, for people with orange innate spiritual roots, entering the divine saint stage would be their limit. They might stand a chance in breaking through to the exemplary saint stage, but it would be almost impossible for them to break through to the quintessential saint stage. Your innate spiritual root is yellow. If your cultivation base is not at the exemplary saint stage, I recommend you to try again next time. Naturally, you can continue, but be prepared to get injured. The same phrase was repeated by the other 3 bronze flame elders to the 3 people with yellow innate spiritual roots. 3 of them nodded. In the end, 2 of them stayed on while 1 of them left. The person who had left was only at the Mastery Divine Saint stage. His chance of passing the strength assessment was really low. He had only come because he wanted to see if his innate spiritual root was green. If he had a green innate spiritual root, he would not have to participate in the strength assessment. The principle of the assessment from the fire worship sect's 4-symbol sanctum prioritized those who had a high innate talent. For example, a person with green spiritual root would qualify as a disciple as long as their cultivation base was at the divine saint stage. This was because people with green spiritual roots would certainly break through to the quintessential saint stage and had a high chance of breaking through to the saint celestial stage. If such talented people were properly nurtured, they would certainly grow to become the fire worship sect's pillars of strength. As for those with innate spiritual roots that were ranked higher than green innate spiritual roots, they were completely exempted from the strength assessment and might even stand a chance to become a disciple of a golden flame elder. On Dao Martial Saint Land, there was an old folk song about how people who possessed green spiritual roots could certainly break through to the saint celestial stage as long as they did not die young. After the first group of 4 people left, another 4 people stepped forward. 4 people were assessed in each round. As time passed, some people who found out they possessed orange innate spiritual roots left the place in low spirits. Most people possessed yellow innate spiritual roots and most of them stayed to take part in the strength assessment. Only a small group of people left because they knew they were not strong enough to pass the strength assessment. More than 100 people had left before the innate talent assessment had ended. There were less than 1,000 people left on the scene. Green spiritual root. Just like earlier, 4 people stepped forward to have their innate talent assessed. When one of them put his hand on the spiritual pearl, it began to glow with a green light. It instantly caught everyone's attention. It was a middle-aged man whose complexion was as smooth as jade. He was dressed in a scholarly fashion. He was obviously stunned when he found out he possessed a green innate spiritual root. He looked delighted when he finally regained his senses. It turns out to be a green spiritual root. Almost 400 people have been assessed, but only 1 person possesses the green innate spiritual root so far. As long as those with green spiritual roots have a cultivation base at the divine saint stage, the strength assessment would be a mere formality. Green innate spiritual root. I hope mine is also a green innate spiritual root. Otherwise, it would be difficult for me to join the fire worship sect with my cultivation base at the peak of the divine saint stage. People whispered among themselves as they looked at the middle-aged man who dressed like a scholar with a hint of envy and jealousy in their eyes. The bronze flame elder looked at the middle-aged man who was dressed like a scholar and asked with a smile, "What's your cultivation base?" The bronze flame elder also possessed a green innate spiritual root. As long as the middle-aged man before him joined the fire worship sect, he would be able to rise to the ranks of a bronze flame elder like him sooner or later. For this reason, he treated the middle-aged man as an equal. Early exemplary saint stage, the middle-aged man replied with a smile after he regained his senses. He's at the early exemplary saint stage. With his cultivation base and innate talent, it's certain he'll be able to join the fire worship sect. If he breaks through to the quintessential saint stage, he might even obtain the pass to enter the fire worship sect's saint land. The assessment today will merely be a formality to him. With his innate talent, there will be many silver flame elders who will want to accept him as a direct disciple. Most people felt envious and jealous when they looked at the middle-aged man. After assessing 400 people, only one person possesses a green innate spiritual root. It seems very likely that I possess a yellow innate spiritual root. I can only hope it's not an orange innate spiritual root, Duan Lingtian thought to himself. There was a hint of envy in Duan Lingtian's eyes as well when he looked at the middle-aged man standing in the distance. When he was on Cloud Continent, he had consumed the 10,000 years stalactite milk that raised his innate talent greatly to the point where he had the highest innate talent on Cloud Continent. However, he was only the strongest on the mortal continents. Having the highest innate talent on the mortal continents meant nothing in the Dao Martial Saint Land. Perhaps, the middle-aged man who was dressed like a scholar brought luck with him because, after a few more rounds of assessment, they discovered another person who possessed the green innate spiritual root. The second person with a green spiritual root. Everyone's attention, including Duan Lingtian, shifted to the person who possessed a green innate spiritual root. It was a young man who had an ordinary appearance. He would not have stood out in a crowd. He also looked as though he was unaware he possessed a green innate spiritual root. He was visibly stunned for quite a while. He only regained his senses when the bronze flame elder standing in front of him spoke to him. He began to shout excitedly. He seemed more excited than the middle-aged man who was dressed like a scholar. However, no one thought anything of his overexcitement. In fact, they thought it was normal. If they were in his shoes, they might have been even more excited. Peng Wei, congratulations. The young man's companion congratulated him. At the same time, he did not forget to say proudly to the people around him, this green innate spiritual root prodigy is my brother. Initially, I didn't think he'll be able to pass the assessment since he's only at the intermediate divine saint stage. I didn't expect him to possess a green innate spiritual root. Intermediate divine saint stage cultivator with a green spiritual root. He was certainly qualified to become a disciple of the fire worship sect. The people in the surrounding finally understood his excitement. If he did not possess a green innate spiritual root, he would have come here in vain. It was like he had won the lottery when they discovered he possessed a green innate spiritual root. I really hope I'm as lucky as him. Many people who were present and who were at the divine saint stage silently prayed. As time passed, they discovered several more people who possessed green innate spiritual roots. Meanwhile, many who were aware of their own strength also left on their own accord. Soon after, it was Duan Lingtian's turn. When Duan Lingtian and 3 other people stepped forward to face the bronze flame elders, the entire place fell silent immediately. Everyone's attention was focused on Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian had left a lasting impression on them from yesterday's death duel. Chapter 1905. An old man whose cultivation was at the mastery exemplary saint stage looked at Duan Lingtian and said solemnly, yesterday when I probed Duan Lingtian using my divine consciousness, I discovered he's not even 40 years old. Based on the strength he displayed even after he was severely injured, his innate talent must be very high. He must have a blue innate spiritual root. He's not even 40 years old. His words shocked many people. Since the old man had mentioned his cultivation base was at the mastery exemplary saint stage, and he had left a lasting impression on the others during the innate talent assessment, nobody doubted his words. Although he was heavily injured by Elder Lian and was on the brink of death, he was still strong enough to cast such a powerful divine ability and kill Yongwu who was at the mastery divine saint stage. Although divine abilities are powerful, it would still rely on one's strength and spiritual energy. His cultivation base must be higher than Yongwu. In other words, he must be at the peak of the divine saint stage at least. The innate spiritual root of someone at the peak of the divine saint stage who's not even 40 years old has to be blue or indigo. Indigo innate spiritual root. As far as I know, only elite powerhouses and geniuses in the 3 great sects have indigo innate spiritual root. Don't tell me the fire worship sect is going to gain another genius with an indigo innate spiritual root. If his innate spiritual root is indigo, the sect leader of fire worship sect might even take him in as a disciple. As the crowd discussed heatedly among themselves, their burning gazes landed on Duan Lingtian. It was obvious they were all eager to see the result of Duan Lingtian's innate talent assessment. It had to be either a blue or indigo innate spiritual root. I think it's unlikely for him to possess an indigo innate spiritual root. It's said that among the geniuses who possess indigo innate spiritual roots in fire worship sect, there are some who had broken through to the exemplary saint stage when they were only 30 years old. I think he has a blue innate spiritual root, a young man said. The moment his words left his mouth, he was instantly refuted by those beside him. How do you know his cultivation base is not at the exemplary saint stage? Don't forget we're only speculating when we say he's at the peak of the Divine Saint stage. There's a possibility that he has already broken through to the Exemplary Saint stage. He managed to turn the table and kill Yongwu, who was at the Mastery Divine Saint stage, in just one blow, even though he was heavily injured. That's not something anyone can do. That's right, he must know a secret tactic to conceal his cultivation base. It's not impossible for him to be at the Exemplary Saint stage. If he's really at the Exemplary Saint stage or above, then it's possible that he possesses an indigo innate spiritual root. How exciting! What rank is his innate spiritual root? Another round of discussion took place. Everyone's gaze turned even more intense when they looked at Duan Lingtian. They could not wait to find out whether he possessed a blue or indigo innate spiritual root. Blue innate spiritual root, indigo innate spiritual root, not even 40 years old. Exemplary Saint stage. Duan Lingtian took a step forward and faced the Black Turtle Sanctum's Bronze Flame Elder. As he listened to discussion behind him, the corner of his mouth twitched before it curled up into a bitter smile. Blue innate spiritual root, indigo innate spiritual root. He did not even dare to hope that he would possess something medium rank like a green innate spiritual root, let alone these two high rank innate spiritual roots. He was aware of his own condition. Not even 40 years old. This was only because he spent most of his time cultivating in the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. Although time flowed quickly in the pagoda, it also halted the aging process when he was inside. If one counted properly, he was older than 40 years old. Naturally, in the upper province of the Tao Martial Saint land, where almost everyone was 300, 1,000 or even several thousands years of age, he would still be considered a baby. Exemplary Saint stage. He had just broken through to the early Divine Saint stage. The main reason he had broken through so quickly was all thanks to the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda and his other fortuitous encounters like the Dragon Cleansing Pool. If he did not have the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda or the fortuitous encounters, he would not possess his current cultivation base. It's absolutely impossible for me to possess a green innate spiritual root or higher. Duan Lingtian concluded. Naturally, this was all his speculation. He would not know until he was assessed. Blue innate spiritual root, indigo innate spiritual root. Li An's eyes gleamed sinisterly as he looked at Duan Lingtian. Li An only possessed a blue innate spiritual root. However, the fellow whom he wanted to kill might possess an indigo innate spiritual root. Li An was instantly overwhelmed by an urge to kill Duan Lingtian. He knew what it meant to possess an indigo innate spiritual root. When those who possessed indigo innate spiritual roots grew stronger, they would be given a first-rate position, like a golden flame elder, even if he made mistakes in the fire worship sect. If they behaved, they might even stand a chance in becoming the vice sect leader or the sect leader of the fire worship sect. The moment Li An about how this fellow whom he had a huge enmity with might possess an indigo innate spiritual root, he could not wait to kill him as quickly as he could. If Duan Lingtian really possessed an indigo innate spiritual root, he would grow strong enough to kill Li An in the future. For this reason, he must kill him while he was still in the cradle. However, it's possible he might not possess an indigo innate spiritual root. It's possible he only possesses a blue innate spiritual root like me. However, even if his innate spiritual root is blue, I must kill him as soon as I can to stop him from becoming a threat to me in the future. Li An once again sentenced Duan Lingtian to death in his heart. Indigo innate spiritual root. Tang Shan looked at Duan Lingtian with bright eyes as an anticipatory expression appeared on his face. Duan Lingtian, I really hope you possess an indigo innate spiritual root. If it's really the case, Lord Sect Leader will definitely take you in as his direct disciple when he comes out of cultivation. At that time, even Li An would have to take initiative and ask for forgiveness from you, Tang Shan thought to himself. At this moment, even the three people who stepped forward to get assessed did not put their hands on the spiritual pearls. Their eyes and the eyes of all the Bronze Flame Elders were trained on Duan Lingtian. They were waiting for him to put his hand on the spiritual pearl. Although the four Black Turtle Sanctum's Bronze Flame Elders were not present yesterday, they had heard about the death duel between Duan Lingtian and Yongwu, the son of the fifth elder from Northern Plethora sect. They were also very curious about Duan Lingtian, this martial art genius who was not even 40 years old but had a cultivation base at the peak of the Divine Saint stage at least. Would he have a blue or indigo innate spiritual root? Duan Lingtian, hurry up and put your hand on the spiritual pearl. The Bronze Flame Elder standing in front of Duan Lingtian could not help but urge lightly when he saw Duan Lingtian remaining still for a long time. His tone was extremely polite. The young man standing before him might be a genius who possessed a blue or indigo innate spiritual root after all. If such a person grew stronger, he would be a silver flame elder at least in the future. If he possessed an indigo innate spiritual root, he would be even stronger and gain a higher ranking position. Although such a person had not reached his full potential yet, he was not someone the Bronze Flame Elder could afford to offend. Upon hearing Bronze Flame Elder's words, Duan Lingtian responded, "All right." Duan Lingtian shook his head when he sensed everyone's eyes on him. However, he still extended his hand and placed it on the spiritual pearl. The spiritual pearl was cold to the touch. Moreover, it felt a little strange to Duan Lingtian. His hand that was touching the spiritual pearl felt a little itchy. It felt as though some energy from the spiritual pearl was tickling his palm. Meanwhile, the entire place was completely silent. Everyone's attention was focused on the spiritual pearl that Duan Lingtian had laid his hand on. Time continued to pass by quietly. The span of a breath went by, the span of 2 breaths went by, the span of 3 breaths went by. It was so quiet that not even the sound of breathing could be heard. This was because everybody, including Duan Lingtian, was holding their breaths as they stared intently at the spiritual pearl. Finally, 10 breaths had gone by. Hints of light began to radiate from the spiritual pearl. "It's out." Apart from Duan Lingtian who was feeling anxious, everyone was excited. Li An's gaze turned colder. If Duan Lingtian possessed an indigo innate spiritual root, then he would have to find a new way of dealing with him. The sect leader of the fire worship sect would definitely favor him and might even take him in as a direct disciple if he possessed an indigo innate spiritual root. This was something he did not wish to see. If he really possesses an indigo innate spiritual root, I must kill him before Lord Sect Leader comes out of his cultivation. I can't give him the chance to become the direct disciple of the sect leader, Lian thought to himself. If Duan Lingtian became the direct disciple of the sect leader, he would not dare to find fault with Duan Lingtian at all even if his courage was multiplied by 100. As the sect leader of fire worship sect, the sect leader had superb skills, and he was not someone Lian could offend. If he really possesses the indigo innate spiritual root, I must think of a way to get rid of him as soon as possible. I don't wish to bow or kneel or even extend a formal apology to him when he becomes the direct disciple of Lord Sect Leader. The moment Lian thought of this, the killing intent in his heart intensified. Chapter 1906. One could imagine if Duan Lingtian really became the direct disciple of the sect leader of fire worship sect, he would have to bow his head and ask for forgiveness from Duan Lingtian if he wanted to stay in the fire worship sect. Naturally, he did not wish to leave the fire worship sect. Moreover, he was even more unwilling to bow or kneel in front of Duan Lingtian. For this reason, if Duan Lingtian really possessed an indigo innate spiritual root, he would only be left with one option. He would have to kill Duan Lingtian, this threat, in the cradle before the sect leader of fire worship sect came out of his cultivation. Naturally, if Duan Lingtian only possessed a blue innate spiritual root, the matter would not be so urgent since people with blue innate spiritual roots would not catch the attention of their sect leader. Duan Lingtian, you better pray you don't have the indigo innate spiritual root. Otherwise, I'll spare no efforts in killing you even if it's dangerous for me to do so. Li An's gaze turned even colder when he looked at Duan Lingtian. Meanwhile, the spiritual pearl Duan Lingtian touched finally showed its color. However, upon seeing the color, apart from Duan Lingtian who seemed as though he had expected it, everyone was shocked still. They were speechless. Soon after, some people began to regain their senses, and the expressions on their faces were dramatic. How's this possible? Impossible, right? How can Duan Lingtian's innate talent be so low? This innate spiritual root doesn't match Duan Lingtian at all. Something's wrong with that spiritual pearl, right? I also think something's wrong with that spiritual pearl. The crowd discussed among themselves, unwilling to believe the sight before their eyes was true. To be more accurate, they refused to believe the result of Duan Lingtian's innate talent assessment was true. Duan Lingtian seemed to only possess a yellow innate spiritual root. Although most people, among the 1,000 people who had participated in the innate talent assessment, possessed yellow innate spiritual roots, they did not expect Duan Lingtian would also possess a yellow innate spiritual root after witnessing his strength and taking into account that he was not even 40 years old. Duan Lingtian did not deserve a yellow innate spiritual root at all. Not only that, but they thought even a green innate spiritual root was not good enough for Duan Lingtian. In their opinion, only the blue or indigo innate spiritual root matched the strength and innate talent Duan Lingtian had displayed. Is something wrong with the spiritual pearl? At this moment, it was not only the crowd who thought so, but even the 4 bronze flame elders and Teng Shan, the silver flame elder, thought so as well. Duan Lingtian, something must be wrong with the spiritual pearl. Try another one and see, Teng Shan said as he looked at Duan Lingtian. At the same time, he looked at the other bronze flame elder meaningfully, prompting the latter to place a different spiritual pearl in front of Duan Lingtian. Lian was still in shock over the fact that Duan Lingtian only possessed a yellow innate spiritual root. For this reason, he did not object to Teng Shan's arrangement. Naturally, deep down in Lian's heart, he also felt that something was wrong with the spiritual pearl. Duan Lingtian was strong enough to kill a Mastery Divine Saint stage martial cultivator even after he was heavily injured, and he was not even 40 years old. How could he only possess a yellow innate spiritual root? Under everyone's watchful eyes, Duan Lingtian smiled wryly and said to Teng Shan, "Elder Teng Shan, I think there's no need for me to try again. I don't think there's anything wrong with the spiritual pearl. My innate spiritual root should be yellow." Duan Lingtian knew his own innate talent better than other people. Although he had consumed the 10,000 years stalactite milk, and he had raised his innate talent to its peak, that was only on the mortal continent. Such innate talent would only be considered ordinary in the lower province, let alone the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint land. Moreover, he did not think there was something wrong with the soul pearl since it was working fine all this while. For this reason, he was certain he possessed a yellow innate spiritual root. He would be lying if he said he was not disappointed by the result. However, since he had already mentally prepared himself, he was able to remain calm. Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Teng Shan thought Duan Lingtian could not be bothered with the result of the assessment. For this reason, he insisted that Duan Lingtian try again. Try again with another spiritual pearl. I believe I'm not the only one who refuses to believe that you possess a yellow innate spiritual root. Other people nodded their heads as well. At this moment, Duan Lingtian was forced to try again even though he felt there was no need to do so. As he placed his hand on another spiritual pearl, everyone shifted their eyes to the spiritual pearl he was touching. There should be no problem with this spiritual pearl, right? It's rare for something to be wrong with a spiritual pearl, so I'm sure there won't be any problems this time. How can there be such a coincidence? Hey, is it possible that Duan Lingtian really possesses a yellow innate spiritual root? Do you think it's possible? Unless he also knows a secret tactic to conceal his age like how he conceals his cultivation base, he should have a blue innate spiritual root at least. Many people discussed among themselves as they stared at the spiritual pearl Duan Lingtian was touching. Another 10 breaths passed as a faint light began to emit from the spiritual pearl. Everyone held their breaths again as they stared at the spiritual pearl. The light grew brighter and brighter. In the end, it even looked like the sun. However, the place fell silent again when they saw the color of the light the spiritual pearl emitted. A few moments later, the crowd broke into a commotion. It's still a yellow innate spiritual root. How is this possible? Don't tell me something's wrong with the spiritual pearl again. It's possible for something to be wrong with one spiritual pearl but two at the same time. Impossible. Looks like Duan Lingtian's innate spiritual root is really yellow. Based on his strength and his age, how's it possible for him to possess a yellow innate spiritual root? Age. Have you ever considered that maybe he knows how to conceal his age as well since he knows how to conceal his cultivation base? Who knows? Maybe he's several hundred years old, and he's concealing his age so he can pretend to be young. Now that you mention it, it's possible. Although I've not heard about any secret tactics that could conceal one's age, I've also not heard about any secret tactics that could conceal one's cultivation base. Humph. An old fellow who's several hundred years old actually conceals his age and cultivation base to participate in the fire worship sect's 4 symbols sanctums assessment. This is my first time encountering someone pretending to be young. How ridiculous. The crowd was in an uproar. Initially, they thought something might be wrong with the second spiritual pearl, but they quickly dismissed the idea. In the end, most of them concluded Duan Lingtian was actually an old fellow who was several hundred years old. Due to the reason he knew how to conceal his true age and cultivation base, he was able to mislead everybody present. At this moment, even Teng Shan agreed with this reasoning. Otherwise, he did not have an explanation for what just happened. Yellow innate spiritual root. Lian laughed when he saw Duan Lingtian still had a yellow innate spiritual root even after getting assessed a second time. Disdain could be seen in his eyes. So he's actually a useless old pervert. Before this, just like the others, he also thought that Duan Lingtian was a young martial genius who had a high innate talent. However, based on the current situation, they had all misjudged him. He was actually an old fellow pretending to be a young man using a secret tactic. Old fellow? Duan Lingtian was bewildered when he heard the crowd's words. It did not cross his mind that he would be regarded as a dirty old man pretending to be young. Although he was older than 40 years old, he was still the youngest compared to the people present, right? Duan Lingtian did not know whether to laugh or cry when he was labeled as an old fellow by a group of people who were much older than him. Naturally, he felt helpless since he had no way of explaining to them how he possessed his strength. He could not tell them that he possessed the 7 treasures' exquisite pagoda and had numerous fortuitous encounters, could he? He could not tell them he had just broken through to the early divine saint stage, could he? It's okay, let them say whatever they want. In the end, Duan Lingtian could only turn a deaf ear to the discussion in the surroundings. He shifted his attention to his innate spiritual root as a sense of bitterness filled his heart. I only have a yellow innate spiritual root. If I didn't consume the 10,000 years stalactite milk back when I was on Cloud Continent, would the rank of my innate spiritual root be even lower? Elder Huo, can I change my innate spiritual root? Although Duan Lingtian had mentally prepared himself, he could not help but feel dissatisfied by his yellow innate spiritual root. He really wished there were ways to improve the rank of his innate spiritual root. I only have a yellow innate spiritual root, but I've already cultivated to the early divine saint stage at such an age. If I can improve the rank of my innate spiritual root, coupled with the 4th level of the 7 treasures exquisite pagoda, won't my cultivation speed be terrifyingly fast? The moment Duan Lingtian thought of this, he became a little excited. However, his excitement faded away suddenly as though a bucket of cold water had been thrown on him. What if there's no way to improve the rank of my innate spiritual root? Based on my observation, I roughly know what innate spiritual roots are. At the same time, Elder Huo's voice resonated. Theoretically, one can improve the rank of one's innate spiritual root in this mundane realm. Not only that, but there's more than one way to improve its rank. Chapter 1907. There's more than one method to improve its ranking. How? Duan Lingtian became excited again upon hearing Elder Huo's words. Duan Lingtian might not have outwardly shown it, but he was actually bothered and disappointed that he only possessed a yellow innate spiritual root. The innate spiritual roots were divided into 7 ranks: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo and violet. The yellow innate spiritual root could not even be considered as a medium rank innate spiritual root, it was on the lower side of the spectrum. More than 90% of the hundreds of people that remained had yellow innate spiritual roots as well. The yellow innate spiritual root might be acceptable in the Tao martial saint land, but it was not worth mentioning at all in a sect like the fire worship sect. Most of the ordinary disciples in the fire worship sect possessed yellow innate spiritual roots. Now that he learned from Elder Huo that he could improve the rank of his innate spiritual root, how could he not be excited? Elder Huo did not reply to Duan Lingtian's question. Instead, he muttered to himself, previously, I was wondering why your cultivation speed is not faster than ordinary people since you've opened 99 saint veins and has a high innate talent. Now that I look at it, it must be the law of this mundane realm that restricts you. The law of this mundane realm. Upon hearing his words, Duan Lingtian could not help but feel shocked. This was not his first time hearing about the realm's law. According to Elder Huo, when Duan Lingtian's soul first came into this world, the rebirth martial emperor's soul tried to destroy his soul. However, due to the law of the realm, the rebirth martial emperor had destroyed himself instead. Apart from that, the soul, Black Nether, in the Devilseal tablet had also died because of this realm's law. His soul did not belong to this mundane realm, so it was tainted with the law of the other mundane realm. When the soul born in this mundane realm tried to destroy his soul, it would be destroyed by the law of the other mundane realm instead. Similarly, if he had taken the initiative to destroy the rebirth martial emperor or Black Nether's soul, he would have died. The law of the realms was mysterious in this boundless universe. Even the most elite beings in the Devata realms, those heavenly emperor powerhouses, were also restricted by their realm's law. Yes, Elder Huo replied, based on the current situation, apart from cultivation environment and resources, the law of this mundane realm that's restricting your cultivation speed is related to the innate spiritual root. The innate spiritual root directly affects one's innate talent. Your high innate talent that's granted from opening 99 saint veins is restricted by the law of this realm. Otherwise, you can be considered as a genius even in the Devata realms. Then, does this mean that innate spiritual roots only exist in this mundane realm? Duan Lingtian was not a fool, he could guess what Elder Huo was alluding to. That's right, Elder Huo responded once again before continuing, whether it's planet Yanhuang, a mundane realm, where I was from, or the Devata realm I went to after, the Jade Emperor Heaven, one's innate talent is decided by the number of saint veins that are opened in one's body. However, in planet Yanhuang, saint veins are known as geographical veins, and in the Jade Emperor Heaven, it's called the heavenly veins. Elder Huo paused for a moment before he said, in this mundane realm, there are different laws. All cultivators, innate talent, human and beast, are decided by the innate spiritual root. With my current divine consciousness, I can see the innate spiritual root in your soul. You have a yellow innate spiritual root, and it's considered ordinary in this mundane realm. No wonder your cultivation speed is so slow despite having the help of the 7 treasures exquisite pagoda. There was a hint of reproach in his tone. I probably obtained the yellow innate spiritual root after I consumed the 10,000-year stalactite milk on Cloud Continent. The innate spiritual root I previously possessed might be a red or orange innate spiritual root. Duan Lingtian smiled wryly. The 10,000-year stalactite milk is indeed a rare spiritual item. However, even if it can improve the rank of your innate spiritual root, yellow is probably the highest it can go, Elder Huo chimed in. Elder Huo, I remember when I first found the 7 treasures exquisite pagoda and met you, the 7 treasures exquisite pagoda helped with me with a rebirth with its remaining force. How come it didn't improve the rank of my innate spiritual root? Previously, the 7 treasures pagoda had used its remaining force to help him undergo a rebirth process. When he was still on Cloud Continent, the 10,000-year stalactite milk had helped him with a rebirth process as well. At that time, it had helped him raise his innate talent to its peak on Cloud Continent. The rebirth that the 7 treasures exquisite pagoda helped you with merely raised your physical strength. It has nothing to do with the innate spiritual root, Elder Huo explained. Duan Lingtian finally understood this as the questions in his heart were answered. He finally knew why his innate talent was still low even though he had opened 99 saint veins. He finally knew why his innate talent did not improve even with the help of the 7 treasures exquisite pagoda. The moment Duan Lingtian recalled how Elder Huo told him there was more than one method to improve his innate spiritual root, he took a deep breath to suppress the excitement he felt before he asked, Elder Huo, what should I do to improve my innate spiritual root? Earlier, I'd used my divine consciousness to study your innate spiritual root. There are 2 ways to improve it. You should know one of the ways to improve it, Elder Huo replied. I should know how to improve it. Duan Lingtian was stunned and baffled. What was this? What could he know? If he knew, was there a need for him to ask about it? Your innate spiritual root was raised through that method, Elder Huo reminded him. At this moment, Duan Lingtian finally understood what Elder Huo meant. He smiled wryly. Oh, you mean the 10,000-year stalactite milk. However, didn't you say the 10,000 years stalactite milk had already improved my innate spiritual root to its limit? Yes, I did. However, that's only limited to the 10,000 years stalactite milk. There are many spiritual items that are similar to the 10,000 years stalactite milk but are more marvelous than it in this world. If the 10,000 years stalactite milk can improve your innate spiritual root to yellow, why can't other items improve it as well? Elder Huo asked rhetorically. Upon hearing that, Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up immediately. Indeed, the 10,000-year stalactite milk was useless to his innate spiritual root now. However, if he was able to find spiritual items more marvelous than the 10,000-year stalactite milk, why should he be afraid he could not improve his innate spiritual root? Elder Huo, you must know what spiritual items can improve my innate spiritual root, right? Hurry up and tell me. Duan Lingtian asked Elder Huo eagerly. I know many spiritual items that can improve your innate spiritual root. However, can you remember them if I tell you now? How about this? I'll transmit the appearance and characteristics of the items to you. You'll be able to remember them this way. The moment Elder Huo finished speaking, information began to surge into Duan Lingtian's mind. As the information surged into his mind, he felt a terrifying aura that made his soul tremble. Duan Lingtian knew it was Elder Huo's powerful divine consciousness. Usually, Elder Huo would only use a little of his divine consciousness with him so he did not feel anything. However, at this moment, Elder Huo had used quite a huge amount of his divine consciousness to pass the information to Duan Lingtian. Elder Huo's divine consciousness was so powerful that it even made Duan Lingtian's soul tremble. Elder Huo's current divine consciousness is even more powerful than Li An's divine consciousness. Looks like Elder Huo's strength is recovering nicely. When Duan Lingtian's soul trembled, he realized Elder Huo had recovered much of his strength. At the very least, he was still much more powerful than Lian. Unfortunately, the restriction the 7 treasures exquisite pagoda places on Elder Huo is too strong. He can only release his divine consciousness that doesn't contain any offensive energy. Otherwise, there's no need for me to conceal myself. Duan Lingtian could not help but sigh when he thought of this. It was apparent he had a very powerful companion by his side, but he could not ask him for help at all. How frustrating. As Elder Huo withdrew his divine consciousness, Duan Lingtian discovered he had gained a lot of information about spiritual items that could improve his innate spiritual root. So many items. Duan Lingtian was surprised. However, after he roughly scanned through the information, he discovered that even though there were a lot of items, he had not seen or heard about any of them. Looks like it won't be easy for me to look for spiritual items to improve my innate spiritual root. Realization dawned on Duan Lingtian as he asked, Elder Huo, earlier you mentioned there's another way to improve my innate spiritual root apart from using these spiritual items. Compared to searching for these spiritual items, the other method is a lot simpler. However, the success rate for the previous method is 100%. This method might not yield the same result. So it's better if you mentally prepare yourself, Elder Huo replied. Might not yield the same result. Duan Lingtian felt a pang of disappointment, but he urged Elder Huo to speak. Tell me, Elder Huo. It was too difficult for him to search for the spiritual items. If there was a shortcut, he really wanted to give it a try even if he might fail. This method is related to the divine ability, the elementary devouring tactic, that you mastered, Elder Huo said. I don't know the elementary devouring tactic too well, but the advanced devouring tactic that the Heavenly Emperor powerhouses in the Devata realm possess comes to mind. The advanced devouring tactic is said to be able to absorb all kinds of energies. Since your divine ability is a derivation of the advanced devouring tactic, it might be able to devour other people's innate spiritual root and allow you to strengthen your innate spiritual root. Chapter 1908. Upon hearing Elder Huo's words, Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up immediately. Devouring other people's innate spiritual roots to strengthen my innate spiritual root. This method could be considered as a shortcut as well if it worked. At the very least, it was more reliable than searching for spiritual items that he had not seen before. Yes, devouring other people's innate spiritual roots, Elder Huo responded, theoretically, it should work. You'll need to put it into action to see if it'll actually work. If it works, the person whose innate spiritual root is devoured by you will lose his innate spiritual root. He would probably wish he's dead since he wouldn't be able to raise his cultivation base for the rest of his life once you devour his innate spiritual root. Duan Lingtian nodded. Although it sounded ruthless to devour other people's innate spiritual roots, he would not do it indiscriminately. He would only target those people who deserved it or those who had offended him. He would not feel guilty if he did it this way. Although strength was everything in this world, Duan Lingtian still had his conscience. If he did not have a conscience, what different would he be from a cold-blooded beast? Humans were different from beasts because of their conscience. Duan Lingtian did not reject this method of improving his innate spiritual root even though it was ruthless since he knew he would only target those who deserved it. An example of such a person was Lian. At this moment, Duan Lingtian raised his head to look at the Black Turtle Sanctum's silver flame elder Lian who was looking at him disdainfully. With my current strength, it'll be difficult for me to get near him, let alone devouring his innate spiritual root. Stronger, I need to get stronger. Currently, I'm still too weak. Although Duan Lingtian was quite strong, he still felt a sense of helplessness when he was faced with Lian. Not only was Lian a Saint Celestial stage powerhouse, but he was also ranked in the top 300 on the Supreme Saint ranking. He could not compare to someone like that at this moment. Even if he used his Jasper Celestial Sword, he would not be able to hurt Lian at all. Instead, he would be killed by Lian. The gap between him and Lian was just too wide now. If I pass the assessment and remain in the Black Turtle Sanctum, Lian definitely won't personally make his move. If I possess the indigo innate spiritual root that even the sect leader of fire worship sect regards highly, he would definitely personally make a move even if it would be dangerous. Now that he sees I only have a yellow innate spiritual root, he'll think I'm not worthy of him personally making a move. Lian would be shocked if he could hear Duan Lingtian's thoughts. This was because Duan Lingtian was right. Originally, Lian had already mentally prepared himself to kill Duan Lingtian so that he would not bring trouble to him in the future. He would have to take the risk because Duan Lingtian possessed the indigo spiritual root. When he saw Duan Lingtian merely possess the yellow innate spiritual root, he no longer saw him as a threat. After all, Duan Lingtian was merely an old man who had disguised himself and concealed his innate talent. Lian found it to be beneath him to personally make a move on such a person. However, even if Lian doesn't personally make his move, he'll definitely send someone else to deal with me. At that time, I'll devour the innate spiritual root of the first person he sends to improve my innate spiritual root. Duan Lingtian became excited the moment he thought of this. He could not wait for Lian to send his men over to deal with him. Is it too early for me to get excited? Elder Huo said that using the elementary devouring tactic to devour innate spiritual roots is only theoretical. It might not work when we put it to the test. Duan Lingtian felt as though he had been splashed with a bucket of cold water when he thought of this. Duan Lingtian naturally retreated since his assessment had ended. Unlike before, now that everyone saw he only possessed a yellow innate spiritual root, nobody paid much attention to him anymore. He was not worthy of their attention. At this moment, they all thoroughly believed that Duan Lingtian was an old man who had disguised himself and concealed his cultivation base to get attention. They all looked down at him. Someone glanced at Duan Lingtian and said with disgust, "You're already so old, but you dare to pretend to be young." It's still acceptable if he merely pretends to be young. However, he's overdone it. He even fooled the two Silver Flame Elders from the Black Turtle Sanctum into thinking he was a genius. It's a good thing that the truth is revealed during the innate talent assessment. How disgusting. Previously, I thought I've encountered a genius from the younger generation. I can't believe he turned out to be a lewd old man in disguise. You know what I think? This person should just go to hell. He's just too disgusting. Although most people did not pay attention to Duan Lingtian, there were some people who mocked him without restraint. These people, Duan Lingtian frowned and glanced at those people who mocked him with a displeased expression on his face. I don't know them, and I've not offended them. Put aside the fact that I'm not disguising myself, it's acceptable for them to complain since they don't know any better. However, isn't too much for that guy to ask me to go to hell. These few people who mocked Duan Lingtian were standing near him, so they saw the frown and displeased expression on his face. However, when they saw it, they all looked at him disdainfully. What are you looking at? Old pervert, are you unhappy that we're talking about you? One of them asked with a sneer. If Duan Lingtian was a genius with blue or indigo innate spiritual root, they would not dare to offend him. However, now that they learned that he only possessed a yellow innate spiritual root, there was no reason for them to be wary of him. Perhaps, they could even curry favor with First Silver Flame Elder Lian. Duan Lingtian's expression turned grave, and he said coldly, "You better watch your mouth." He had some impression of the person who had spoken. He was one of the few people who possessed a green innate spiritual root. He was a fierce-looking and burly middle-aged man named Ji Yu-chun. Currently, Ji Yu-chun was looking at Duan Lingtian with a cold expression and a fierce smile on his face. It was as though he had a great enmity with Duan Lingtian. You're a martial cultivator who only has the yellow innate spiritual root, and yet, you dare to act unhappy in front of me. Ji Yu-chun was dumbfounded. As soon as Ji Yu-chun finished speaking, someone standing nearby who clearly wanted to stir up the situation said, "Ji Yu-chun, have you forgotten that he even dared to kill Yongwu, the son of the fifth elder from the Northern Plethora sect? You're only a sectless cultivator. How could he possibly respect you?" Ji Yu-chun finally remembered Duan Lingtian had killed the son of the fifth elder from the Northern Plethora sect yesterday when he heard that person's words. A sense of dread rose up in his heart immediately. Perhaps, Duan Lingtian's innate talent was inferior to his. However, based on his actions yesterday, he was definitely a ruthless person. Otherwise, he would not have dared to offend Elder Lian and kill Yongwu. Various expressions flitted across Ji Yu-chun's face, and he was no longer acting as overbearing as before. He was finally afraid. Duan Lingtian knew what Ji Yu-chun was thinking when he saw the expressions on his face. He instantly sneered. He glanced at him indifferently before he shifted his attention to the 4 people who were currently undergoing the innate talent assessment. When Ji Yu-chun saw Duan Lingtian's disdainful expression, he felt humiliated. He fisted his hands as his body trembled, and he clenched his teeth. He hated Duan Lingtian so much at this moment. However, he could only endure it for now. Although he was an early exemplary saint stage martial cultivator, he did not dare to act recklessly before he understood his opponent better. Who knew if Duan Lingtian's cultivation base was at the intermediate exemplary saint stage or above? Duan Lingtian, my innate talent is higher than yours. Even if I'm no match for you now, I'll definitely surpass you one day and make you kneel and beg for forgiveness. Ji Yu-chun thought to himself angrily. The little dispute between Duan Lingtian and Ji Yu-chun did not attract too much attention. Most people's attention was focused on the innate talent assessment. In the end, 2 more people were discovered to possess a green innate spiritual root. Green spiritual root. Duan Lingtian's eyes were filled with envy when he looked at the 2 men who possessed green innate spiritual roots. After all, his innate spiritual root was only a yellow spiritual root. It was a level below the green spiritual root. After the innate talent assessment ended, it was time for the strength assessment. The strength assessment was carried out in 2 groups. One of the groups consisted of those who possessed green innate spiritual roots. Their assessment was a lot easier. As long as those people's cultivation base were at the divine saint stage or above, they were sure to pass. The other group consisted of people with yellow innate spiritual roots. Compared to the former, their assessment was a lot more difficult. Those whose cultivation base had not reached the exemplary saint stage or above would not be able to pass the assessment. Those with green innate spiritual roots, please follow me. Black Turtle Sanctum's Silver Flame Elder Lian finally spoke. After he finished speaking, he brought the 9 people, including Ji Yu-chun, who possessed green innate spiritual roots away with him. He was in charge of the strength assessment for this group of people. Before he left, he did not forget to look at Duan Lingtian with a cold gaze that was filled with killing intent. However, Duan Lingtian ignored his gaze. This made Lian's expression turn grave as he brought the group of people away. Chapter 1909. Those with green innate spiritual roots left with Lian. The people with yellow innate spiritual roots, including Duan Lingtian, stayed behind. Tang Shan, the other Black Turtle Sanctum's Silver Flame Elder, and another 4 Bronze Flame Elders were in charge of their strength assessment. After Lian brought the men away, Tang Shan looked at Duan Lingtian in disappointment. It did not cross his mind that things would turn out this way. The young man whom he regarded highly only possessed a yellow innate spiritual root. Could it really be that he was an old man in disguise like what people had speculated? He refused to believe it. However, the truth was laid bare before his eyes. He had no choice but to believe it. After the assessment by the Soul Pearl, he discovered the young man who had not even reached the age of 40 only had a yellow innate spiritual root. It was almost impossible for someone below the age of 40 to possess a cultivation base at the peak of the divine saint stage. For this reason, deep in his heart, he actually believed Duan Lingtian had concealed his true age. Duan Lingtian, even if you can pass the strength assessment, I don't think you should stay in the Black Turtle Sanctum. If you decide to leave, I can ask 2 of my friends to accompany you when you leave. There's nothing Elder Lian can do since it's so last minute. A grave voice resonated suddenly in Duan Lingtian's ears. He could tell the voice belonged to Black Turtle Sanctum's Silver Flame Elder Tang Shan. Elder Tang Shan. Duan Lingtian looked at Tang Shan in surprise. It did not cross his mind that Tang Shan would still be willing to help him at this moment. He would risk offending Lian further. He was moved by this gesture. At the very least, Tang Shan did not look down on him because he possessed a yellow innate spiritual root. On top of that, he was even willing to help him. It was rare to find someone like that. I hope he'll leave. This is all I can do to help him, Tang Shan thought to himself after he transmitted his voice to Duan Lingtian. He was willing to help Duan Lingtian because he had taken a liking to him. He did not wish to see Duan Lingtian harmed. Moreover, he still felt guilty that Duan Lingtian was injured by Lian under his watch. In his opinion, it would be best for everyone if Duan Lingtian left. However, there was nothing he could do if he was not willing to leave. If he chose to remain in the Black Turtle Sanctum, he would be helpless to help him even if he wanted to. In the Black Turtle Sanctum, his strength and influence were far inferior compared to Lian. There was nothing he could do once Lian had made up his mind to seek revenge from Duan Lingtian. Earlier, he had thought Duan Lingtian would have a blue or indigo innate spiritual root. If that was the case, there was a high possibility that the sect leader of fire worship sect who was in closed-door cultivation would take Duan Lingtian in as his direct disciple. Lian would not be able to harm Duan Lingtian if he became the direct disciple of the sect leader of fire worship sect. If Duan Lingtian had the blue spiritual root, he could recommend Duan Lingtian to the sanctum leader of the Black Turtle Sanctum. He believed the sanctum leader would be more than happy to take a genius like Duan Lingtian as his direct disciple. Lian would not be able to harm him as well if this happened. He did not expect Duan Lingtian would not have a blue or indigo innate spiritual root. He did not even have a green innate spiritual root. In the end, he discovered he only had a yellow innate spiritual root. The yellow spiritual roots were the most common innate spiritual root in the fire worship sect. Out of 100 ordinary disciples in the fire worship sect, 90 of them would possess yellow innate spiritual roots. Based on this, one could see how common the yellow innate spiritual roots were. Thank you, Elder Teng Shan. Upon hearing Teng Shan's voice transmission, Duan Lingtian immediately transmitted his voice to express his gratitude. Then, he paused for a moment before he continued to say, however, I don't plan to leave the Black Turtle Sanctum for the time being. As for the strength assessment, I'm certain I'll pass. Please don't worry about me, Elder Teng Shan. I'll remember your kindness for helping me out at this moment, Elder Teng Shan. Duan Lingtian's words were filled with confidence. It left no room for doubts, rendering Teng Shan speechless. Fine, if this is your decision, I'll respect it, Teng Shan responded after a long while. He sighed, a hint of exhaustion could be heard in it. After that, Teng Shan shifted his attention to the strength assessment catered to the Duan Lingtian and the others. He took the lead with the help of the 4 bronze flame elders. In the strength assessment catered to Duan Lingtian and the others, those at the exemplary saint stage or above would pass. The passing rate was almost 100%. For this reason, there was no need to further explain the strength assessment. Under the watchful eyes of the others, Duan Lingtian passed the assessment without any incidents. Although Duan Lingtian passed the assessment, the crowd could see it was slightly difficult for him to pass the assessment. Early exemplary saint stage, since he passed the assessment with slight difficulties, he must be at the early exemplary saint stage. Do you think he's hiding his strength again? Is there a chance his strength is stronger than those at the early exemplary saint stage? Aren't you thinking too much? Is there a need to hide his strength now that everything has been exposed? How naive. The crowd whispered among themselves when they saw Duan Lingtian had passed the strength assessment. In the end, almost all of them agreed that Duan Lingtian's cultivation base was at the early exemplary saint stage. If Duan Lingtian was really a young man who had not reached the age of 40, it would have caused a commotion. However, since the crowd believed Duan Lingtian was an old man in disguise, they were not surprised by his cultivation base that was at the early exemplary saint stage. It was very common after all. Duan Lingtian remained calm when he heard their words. His true cultivation base was much lower than what these people thought. It was only at the early divine saint stage. As for why it appeared difficult for him to pass the strength assessment, this was because he only relied on his sun saint energy. Although his saint energy was comparable to the saint energy of a cultivator at the early divine saint stage, since it had fused with the sun's flame, it was not inferior to the saint energy of a cultivator at the early exemplary saint stage. Due to the reason he had just broken through to the early divine saint stage early this morning, he was still not adept with handling the saint energy. This was why it seemed difficult for him to pass the assessment. Duan Lingtian only smiled nonchalantly when he heard the people's words. He was not bothered by it at all. Was there a need for him, Duan Lingtian, to care about others' opinion of him? Those who failed the strength assessment, please leave with these 2 bronze flame elders. Those who passed the assessment will follow the other 2 bronze flame elders to your residence. They will inform you about the things new disciples have to take note of during your journey there, Teng Shan said solemnly. When he finished speaking, he glanced at Duan Lingtian before he left with a sigh. Since Duan Lingtian had made up his mind, there was nothing else he could do. Duan Lingtian could only rely on himself in the future since there was nothing he could do to help. After Teng Shan left, the group of people who failed the strength assessment left in low spirits with the bronze flame elders. The other two bronze flame elders, on the other hand, called out to the group of people who passed the strength assessment and brought them deep into the mountain range. During the journey, the two bronze flame elders distributed the exclusive uniforms of Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples to Duan Lingtian and the others. The exclusive uniform of a Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple was a white robe as well. It was also embroidered with a black turtle with a gray flame. It looked very conspicuous due to the white robes. One could see the embroidery clearly with just a glance. After giving out the exclusive uniforms of the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple, one of the bronze flame elders looked in the east and warned them solemnly, "That's the cultivation place of the sanctum leader of Black Turtle Sanctum and the 5 silver flame elders. Unless you have permission from Lord Sanctum Leader or one of the silver flame elders, you're forbidden to enter. Those who enter without permission will be killed." When he reached the end of his sentence, his tone was cold and filled with murderous intent. Duan Lingtian looked over and could only see thick mist that covered the eastern direction. He could not see anything beyond the mist. It was apparent that some sort of formation that obstructed one's sight was placed there. This place before us is where the altar of Black Turtle Sanctum is located. Our Black Turtle Sanctum's high-grade defensive divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier, is recorded on the Black Turtle statue in the heart of the altar. It allows every Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple to comprehend it, the other bronze flame elder chimed in. Duan Lingtian and the others immediately shifted their eyes to the front. A vast flat land in the middle of the forest awaited them. The vast flat land was surrounded by huge and magnificent palaces that looked like great beasts. They emitted a subtle aura that made one's heart tremble. A big altar stood in the middle of the palaces. The altar was about 10 meters high, and there was a gigantic statue of a black turtle on it. From afar, the ancient gigantic beast looked lifelike. So many people. At the same time, Duan Lingtian and the others were shocked to discover many figures hovering in the air around the black turtle statue. Based on their clothes, Duan Lingtian and the others could tell they were Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples. Several hundred people hovered in the air around the black turtle statue. Some of them were standing, and some of them were sitting. Chapter 1910. A young man standing near Duan Lingtian glanced indifferently at the altar's surroundings before he shifted his eyes back to the two bronze flame elders and asked curiously, "What are they doing?" One of the bronze flame elders raised a brow and said nonchalantly, "They're comprehending the high-grade divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier, of our Black Turtle Sanctum." Black Turtle's Barrier. At once, the eyes of the group of new Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples, including Duan Lingtian, brightened. Some of them had come to the fire worship sect for the sake of the religion while some of them came for the sake of a better future. Put everything aside, just by becoming the disciples of the 4 symbol sanctums that was ranked quite low in the fire worship sect, one would be given the chance to comprehend the high-grade divine ability that was passed down since ancient times in each sanctum. In the fire worship sect's 4 symbol sanctums, apart from outstanding disciples with high innate talent who would be given a chance to enter the fire worship sect's saint land and become a disciple there, any disciple who managed to successfully comprehend the high-grade divine ability would instantly be given a permit to enter the saint land and become a disciple even if their innate talent was not so good. The fire worship sect's disciples were separated into outer disciples and saint land disciples. The outer disciples consisted of the 4 symbol sanctums, disciples. The saint land disciples, on the other hand, were disciples who cultivated in the fire worship sect's saint land. They were considered as elite disciples in the fire worship sect. Entering the fire worship sect's saint land to become a saint land disciple was the dream of every 4 symbol sanctums disciple. The saint land held many things that they could only dream about. If they managed to enter the saint land, their chance of becoming a true powerhouse in the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land would increase greatly. Soon after, someone else took a deep breath before asking excitedly, "Elder, I heard that the Black Turtle Sanctum's high-grade divine ability is the best among the 4 high-grade divine abilities in the 4 symbols sanctum. Is this true?" "It's true." One of the bronze flame elders nodded. "The Black Turtle's Barrier in our Black Turtle Sanctum is a defensive divine ability. In terms of grade, it's much higher than the other 3 high-grade divine abilities from the other 3 sanctums. However, since it's of a higher grade, the difficulty to comprehend it is a lot higher as well. It's said that in the current times, there are less than 10 people who have successfully comprehended the high-grade divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier. Is this true as well?" Somebody asked again. "Less than 10 people? No way. So few. Currently, I heard there are more than 10,000 people who have left the Black Turtle Sanctums, but there are less than 10 people who have successfully comprehended the high-grade divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier. This can't be true, right? I find it hard to believe as well. It can't be true, it's just too absurd. Before the two elders could respond, the people had already begun to discuss among themselves. They all felt it could not be true. Even Duan Lingtian found it hard to believe. It can't be that difficult to comprehend a high-grade divine ability, right? Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Apart from the high-grade divine ability, the golden crow's wings, that Elder Huo passed down to him using a special method, he remembered that he had easily comprehended and mastered the high-grade divine abilities, the elementary devouring tactic and the otherworldly celestial. It was good that nobody could hear Duan Lingtian's thoughts. Put the others aside, even the two bronze flame elders standing nearby, would feel like slapping Duan Lingtian if they knew what he was thinking. There was actually someone who felt it was easy to comprehend a high-grade divine ability. It's true, when the group of Black Turtle Sanctum's new disciples, including Duan Lingtian, shifted their eyes back to the Black Turtle Sanctum's elders, one of the elders nodded solemnly. Currently, there are less than people in Fire Worship sect who have successfully comprehended the high-grade divine ability, the Black Turtle's barrier. It's true, Duan Lingtian and the others were greatly shocked. It took a while before they regained their senses and broke into an uproar. My goodness, how difficult is it to successfully comprehend our Black Turtle Sanctum's high-grade divine ability, the Black Turtle's barrier? There are many people from the Black Turtle Sanctum in the Fire Worship sect, but there are less than 10 people who have successfully comprehended it. Initially, I thought it's best to enter the Black Turtle Sanctum since I can comprehend the best high-grade divine ability Black in the four symbols sanctums. Now that I look at it, it's going to be difficult to successfully comprehend the Black Turtle's barrier. Although one doesn't need to rely on one's innate spiritual root, the rate of successfully comprehend the divine ability, the Black Turtle's barrier, is still 1 out of 1,000. I know myself well, I'm sure it'll be difficult for me to comprehend the Black Turtle's barrier. Why wasn't I selected by the Azure Dragon Sanctum, White Tiger Sanctum or the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's elders? Although the divine abilities from the other 3 sanctums are slightly inferior, it's easier to comprehend. Many people complained about how they were not chosen by the elders from the other 3 sanctums. Humph. The 2 bronze flames elders snorted before they smirked. One of them said indifferently, as the number 1 defensive divine ability in the Fire Worship sect, it's only natural that it's going to be difficult to comprehend. However, do you think it's so easy to comprehend the divine abilities from the other 3 sanctums? Exactly. The other bronze flame elder smirked and chimed in, for the divine abilities from the other 3 sanctums, whether it's the Azure Dragon Sanctum's assist-type divine ability, the White Tiger Sanctum's offensive divine ability or the Black Turtle Sanctum's movement divine ability, although they're not considered as the number 1 offensive, movement or assist-type divine ability in our Fire Worship sect, they're still in the top 3. Although they're not like the Black Turtle's barrier where less than people have successfully comprehended it, there are still less than 30 people who have successfully comprehended them. A high-grade divine ability is not as easy to comprehend as you think it is. Are high-grade divine abilities so difficult to comprehend? Duan Lingtian was puzzled. In his opinion, it was not difficult for him to successfully comprehend the 2 high-grade divine abilities, the elementary devouring tactic and the otherworldly celestial. It should not be difficult for him to comprehend other high-grade divine abilities as well. The hardest part was mastering a high-grade divine ability to the highest stage. Only then would the divine ability's full power could be displayed. However, based on the current situation, it seemed like it was difficult for others to comprehend a high-grade divine ability. Duan Lingtian was puzzled. As usual, he turned to Elder Huo when there was something he did not understand. He instantly asked him, Elder Huo, why did they say it's difficult to successfully comprehend a high-grade divine ability? Is it that difficult? Why don't I find it difficult? I comprehended the elementary devouring tactic and otherworldly celestial quite easily. You really fail to appreciate your blessings. Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Elder Huo could not help but smile wryly. Do you know the Supreme Sword Dao mental cultivation method, the Sovereign Heart Sword, that your master passed down to you as an ultimate tactic that cultivates both sword and heart? As the saying goes, no difficulty is insurmountable if your heart is set on it. Comprehending divine abilities is closely related to a person's heart. You've not made much progress with the Sovereign Heart Sword, but your heart seems to be thoroughly tempered. It's naturally easy for you to comprehend divine abilities. If you can comprehend the Sovereign Heart Sword to the highest stage, it'll only take you 3 days and 3 nights at most to successfully cultivate a high-grade divine ability. When Elder Huo was speaking, envy could be heard in his tone. I've told you before that your master is a peerless genius even in the Devata realms. You're extremely lucky for obtaining the Sovereign Heart Sword. The Sovereign Heart Sword benefits me in this way as well. Isn't this too amazing? Upon hearing Elder Huo's words, Duan Lingtian was dumbfounded. He felt as though this was his first time hearing about the Sovereign Heart Sword. At this moment, he finally understood why it was so easy for him to comprehend the high-grade divine abilities, the elementary devouring tactic and the otherworldly celestial. As it turned out, it was all thanks to the Sovereign Heart Sword. Taking a deep breath to suppress his excitement, Duan Lingtian asked Elder Huo, "Then, does this mean that my heart will be further tempered and my divine ability comprehension speed will also be faster if I can comprehend the third stage of the Sovereign Heart Sword?" Of course, Elder Huo replied with certainty. At once, Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up as the excitement in his heart increased. Then, does this mean the Black Turtle Sanctum's high-grade defensive divine ability, the Black Turtle's barrier, that ordinary people find difficult to comprehend will be easy for me to comprehend? I can't believe the Black Turtle Sanctum's divine ability, the Black Turtle's barrier, is the #1 defensive divine ability in the Fire Worship sect. This Fire Worship sect is one of the 3 most powerful sects in the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land. The Black Turtle's barrier that's considered as the #1 defensive divine ability here, should also be a top-tier defensive divine ability in the entire upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land. Duan Lingtian was excited because he would soon obtain a top defensive divine ability in the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land. Black Turtle's barrier, the #1 defensive divine ability in the Fire Worship sect. No wonder it's so difficult to successfully comprehend it. Although the 3 divine abilities from the other 3 sanctums are not as powerful as the Black Turtle's barrier, it doesn't mean they're not extraordinary as well. It's not much easier to comprehend them compared to the Black Turtle's barrier. Looks like it'll depend on one's comprehension skill no matter which divine ability one wants to comprehend. Comprehension skill is not dictated by one's innate spiritual root. It's still a mystery whether any of us will be able to successfully comprehend the Black Turtle's barrier. Upon hearing the replies from the 2 Bronze Flame Elders, the group of Black Turtle Sanctum's new disciples no longer complained. I'm sure all of you have seen the palaces around the altar. Each of these palaces has its own functions. After we've arranged your accommodation, you can come and have a look and learn about them. Now, follow us to the residence you'll be staying in. Under the guidance of the 2 Bronze Flame Elders, Duan Lingtian and the others made their way toward their future residence. Chapter 1911. The residence of the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples was located in the west of the Black Turtle Sanctum. Many small thatched cottages that appeared shabby were erected on a vast land. When one looked upward, one could see many islands suspended in the air. These suspended islands did not look very big. There were wooden houses on these islands. Although the wooden houses were bigger than the thatched cottages, it was only slightly bigger. These suspended islands with wooden houses were all suspended on the same level. It would be difficult for one to tell how many suspended islands there were in just a glance. Above these islands, one could see other suspended islands that were much bigger in size. There were houses with a small courtyard on these islands. In the courtyards that were filled with plants, a stone table and chair stood on it. Compared to the wooden houses and thatched cottages below, the environment here was much better. As one continued to look upward, one would see 10 huge islands. There was a mansion on each of the 10 islands. The heaven and earth spirit energy looked like fog around the islands. From afar, one could tell that the richness of the heaven and earth spirit energy around the houses with a courtyard, wooden houses, and thatched cottages could not compare to the heaven and earth spirit energy on the 10 suspended islands. Duan Lingtian and the others had followed the 2 Black Turtle Sanctum's Bronze Flame Elders to the outside of the residence of the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples. Their eyes were all fixed on the mansions on the 10 islands that were suspended on the highest level. Do you see the 10 mansions? Those are the Primus houses that Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples stay in. Each of the houses has more than 10 large-scale spirit gathering formations, so the cultivation environment there is not inferior to the cultivation environment of Lord Sanctum Leader, the Silver Flame Elders, and Bronze Flame Elders. One of the Bronze Flame Elders explained to Duan Lingtian and the others. 10 large-scale spirit gathering formations. The cultivation environment was not inferior to Lord Sanctum Leader's residence. The moment the Bronze Flame Elder finished speaking, Duan Lingtian's eyes brightened immediately. He was filled with excitement when he looked at the 10 suspended islands. The others took a deep breath when they stared at the mansions on the 10 suspended islands with a burning gaze. The Primus House is the best residence for Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples, and they belong to the 10 strongest disciples in the Black Turtle Sanctum, the other Bronze Flame Elder chimed in. The moment his words left his mouth, it seemed to have transformed into a bucket of cold water that was splashed on Duan Lingtian and the others. They regained their senses and smiled wryly. No wonder, I was just thinking that not anyone can stay in such a place. My goodness. The 10 strongest disciples in the Black Turtle Sanctum must be at the quintessential saint stage at the very least, right? Of course. There are 3 methods for disciples from the fire worship sect's 4 symbols sanctums to enter the saint land and become a disciple there. I've heard about this as well. The first way is to comprehend the high-grade divine ability from their respective sanctum. Second, if one has a high innate talent, one might be able to obtain special permission from their respective sanctum leader to enter the saint land. The final way is to pass the Saint Land's assessment. Among the 3 methods, the Saint Land's assessment is the most difficult. That's right. It's said that one's cultivation base has to be at the mastery quintessential saint stage in order to pass the Saint Land's assessment. Not only that, but some of the 4 symbols sanctums, disciples who have just broken through to the mastery quintessential saint stage could not pass the Saint Land assessment as well. It's just too difficult. A few of the Black Turtle Sanctum's new disciples who already knew about the ins and outs of the fire worship sect's 4 symbols sanctums discussed among themselves. Doesn't this mean the 10 Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples staying in the mansions possess cultivation base at the intermediate quintessential saint stage? In fact, it's very likely that some of them have cultivation base at the mastery quintessential saint stage. With my current strength, it's impossible for me to stay in the Primus House to cultivate, Duan Lingtian thought to himself when he heard their discussion. He was aware of his own strength, and he was not bothered that he would not be able to stay in a Primus House for the time being. The 4th level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda had been restored, and according to Elder Huo, the cultivation environment was very different from the 3rd level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. Who knew if it would surprise him? Naturally, the cultivation environment outside would affect the cultivation environment inside the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda to a certain extent. Duan Lingtian wished he would be able to cultivate in the Primus House as soon as he possibly could. After learning that the 10 Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples staying in the Primus Houses were at least at the intermediate quintessential saint stage, the Black Turtle Sanctum's new disciples around Duan Lingtian no longer dared to harbor wishful thoughts. This was because their current strength was not a level where they could compete with the 10 disciples living in the Primus Houses. Among the new disciples, the strongest was only at the peak of the exemplary saint stage. He was still far from breaking through to the early quintessential saint stage, let alone the intermediate quintessential saint stage. They all instantly shifted their eyes to look at the 100 courtyards located at the bottom. At the same time, the voice of one of the Bronze Flame Elders resonated in the air. These 100 suspended courtyards are also one of the residences for our Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples. They're called Secundus Houses. Although the cultivation environment is not as good compared to Primus Houses, they have 5 large-scale spirit-gathering formations. That's half of what the Primus Houses have. Secundus House. Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up as an eager expression appeared on his face. The 10 Primus Houses belong to Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples who were at the intermediate quintessential saint stage or above. The 100 Secundus Houses must house Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples who were at the early quintessential saint stage and the peak of the exemplary saint stage. He was no match for the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples at the early quintessential saint stage, but he knew he stood a chance going against disciples at the peak of the exemplary saint stage. Among the new disciples, the few powerhouses at the peak of the exemplary saint stage shared the same thought as Duan Lingtian. With my cultivation base at the peak of the exemplary saint stage, I should be able to stay in a Secundus house. I don't believe I'm no match for the disciples living in the Secundus houses who have cultivation base at the peak of the exemplary saint stage. I must defeat one of them so I can stay there. There should be a place for me in the Secundus houses. A few of the Black Turtle Sanctum's new disciples who were at the peak of the exemplary saint stage said confidently. However, one of the Bronze Flame Elders sneered when he saw how confident they were. As the Black Turtle Sanctum's new disciples who were at the peak of the exemplary saint stage looked at him, he pointed at the place below the Secundus houses. Can you see the wooden houses and thatched cottages? Those are called Tertius houses and Quartus houses. There's a total of 1,000 Tertius houses and 10,000 Quartus houses. Not only that, but the occupancy rate is more than 80%. In other words, there are currently almost 10,000 disciples in our Black Turtle Sanctum. Did all of you think there are less than 100 disciples at the quintessential saint stage among these almost 10,000 disciples? You wish to stay in a Secunda's house with the little strength that you possess. How ridiculous. When the bronze flame elders finished speaking, he burst out laughing. The few new disciples at the peak of the exemplary saint stage blushed. They were so embarrassed that they wished the ground would open and swallow them up. Almost 10,000 people. Duan Lingtian was shocked when he heard the bronze flame elder's words. It did not cross his mind that the Black Turtle Sanctum had so many disciples. Black Turtle Sanctum was just one of the 4 sanctums in the 4 symbols sanctums. Does this mean there are almost 40,000 outer disciples in the 4 symbols sanctums alone? There are still Saint Land disciples and high-ranking officials that I've not taken into count. When Duan Lingtian thought of this, he gasped. He just realized how big the fire worship sect was. In comparison, he was just one person and not worth mentioning at all. This was definitely the biggest sect that Duan Lingtian had encountered. As one of the 3 strongest sects in the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land, the fire worship sect really lives up to its name. Not only that, but even in the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land, these 40,000 people in the fire worship sect can be considered as elites, let alone the outstanding powerhouses who are standing above their peers. Those people are likely leaders in the upper province. The Tertius houses contain 3 spirit gathering formations, and there's 1 spirit gathering formation in the Cortis houses, the bronze flame elder said. I'm sure most of you have figured out the rules in this place. Apart from killing and intentionally crippling someone, you're allowed to fight. As long as you're strong enough, you're allowed to seize a house from a Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple. The bronze flame elder's words managed to rouse the spirit of the new Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples, including Duan Lingtian. Everyone, please look for a Cortis house and change into the Black Turtle Sanctum's uniform. After that, you can begin to look for a place to stay in. It's fine if you have your eyes on residences that are occupied. You can take possession of it if you can defeat the owners. The 2 bronze flame elders instructed Duan Lingtian and the others before they left. Duan Lingtian and the others quickly made their way to the Cortis houses. The occupancy rate of the Cortis houses was indeed more than 80%. Only a little more than 1,000 thatched cottages were vacant. The news disciples are here. A few people walked out of the Cortis and Tertius houses and stared at the new disciples who had walked out of the Cortis houses after they had changed into their uniforms. As soon as Duan Lingtian walked out, he heard a familiar voice say, "I want to challenge you." When he lifted his head, he saw Ji Yu-chun, whom he had a small dispute with earlier, hovering in front of a Tertius house. A Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple stood opposite him. Ji Yu-chun possessed a green innate spiritual root. After that, Duan Lingtian saw the other new disciples who also possessed green innate spiritual roots. They're here as well. Chapter 19:12. Are you challenging me? That Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple whom Ji Yu-chun challenged seemed stunned. Although he was not the strongest among all the disciples living in the 1,000 Tertius houses, he was ranked in the middle as a mastery exemplary saint stage martial cultivator. However, a disciple who had just entered the Black Turtle Sanctum dared to challenge him for the ownership of the Tertius house he lived in. When he regained his senses, he looked at Ji Yu-chun with a cold gaze. Ji Yu-chun's only at the early exemplary saint stage, but he actually dares to challenge a senior disciple staying in a Tertius house. Duan Lingtian thought to himself as he narrowed his eyes. He could not figure out where Ji Yu-chun got his courage from. Among the senior disciples in Black Turtle Sanctum who lived in Tertius houses, there should not be many of them at the early exemplary saint stage. Most of them should be at the intermediate exemplary saint stage or above. Ji Yu-chun had just arrived, but he dared to arbitrarily issue a challenge to a senior disciple. The group of Black Turtle Sanctum's new disciples, including Duan Lingtian, and some of the senior disciples from Black Turtle Sanctum quickly gathered around to watch the show. Wang Ju, it seems like you look weak. To think that a newbie regards you as a soft persimmon. Many of the senior disciples from Black Turtle Sanctum laughed and mocked the disciple whom Ji Yu-chun had challenged. Wang Ju's face turned green when he heard his companions mocking him. His gaze turned colder as he looked at Ji Yu-chun. Boy, Wang Ju, accept your challenge. Come on, show me how strong you are. To think you're so bold as to challenge me. As soon as he finished speaking, killing intent surged out of his body. Ji Yu-chun did not seem like he was going to make a move even when he saw Wang Ju gathering his energy. Instead, he hovered in the air and stared at Wang Ju calmly. You're Wang Ju. What, you took the initiative to challenge me, are you afraid to make a move now? Wang Ju chuckled contemptuously with a disdainful expression on his face. Sometimes, there's no need for one to make a move to win a challenge. Who knows, you might even take the initiative to admit defeat later, senior brother Wang Ju. Under the watchful eyes of the others, a faint smile appeared on Ji Yuchun's face. He seemed certain that he was going to win. Upon hearing Ji Yuchun's words, Wang Ju was stunned. However, he quickly regained his senses and smirked. Admit defeat? Are you dreaming? Admit defeat? Ji Yuchun is overestimating himself too much, right? Many new disciples shook their heads. They looked at Ji Yuchun as though they were looking at an idiot. Is Ji Yuchun crazy? He's a new disciple at the early exemplary saint stage. Why is he so confident the senior disciple is going to admit defeat? He's daydreaming. Does he really think he's invincible just because he possesses a green innate spiritual root? How ridiculous. The new disciples with yellow innate spiritual roots who came with Duan Ling Tian mocked Ji Yuchun. Nobody knew why, but the new disciples who came with Ji Yuchun remained silent. A few of them seemed to be deep in thought as they looked at Ji Yuchun with a slight frown on their faces. Early exemplary saint stage. The senior disciples present on the scene soon learned of this from the discussion among the new disciples from Black Turtle Sanctum. They looked at Wang Ju and mocked him again. Wang Ju, did you hear what they said? This junior brother's cultivation base is only at the early exemplary saint stage, but he has a green innate spiritual root. He's not someone you can offend. That's right, hurry up, and admit defeat. Although this junior brother is not as strong as you are now, it doesn't mean he can't surpass you in the future. Wang Ju, be sensible. If you don't want to suffer in the future, it's better if you admit defeat and give up your house. The group of senior disciples from Black Turtle Sanctum seemed to be advising Wang Ju with good intentions, but in truth, they were all mocking him. So what if Ji Yuchun had a green innate spiritual root? Just based on this alone, he was not eligible to live in a Tertius house as soon as he arrived. Green spiritual root. Wang Ju was angered when he heard his companion's words. His face turned red as he vented his anger at Ji Yuchun. So what if you have a green innate spiritual root? It's not enough for me to admit defeat. You're just an early exemplary saint stage cultivator, but you dare to look down on me. If I don't teach you a lesson today, my surname is not Wang. When he reached the end of his sentence, his voice turned colder. It seemed as though the temperature in the surroundings had dropped as well. Ji Yuchun remained calm as he replied indifferently, that's right. My innate spiritual root is not enough to scare you into giving up your house, but what if I tell you my master is the Silver Flame Elder Lian from the Black Turtle Sanctum? Ji Yuchun sneered when he finished speaking. His gaze turned colder as well when he looked at Wang Ju. Lian, the moment his words left his mouth, apart from those new disciples with green innate spiritual roots who had an expectant expression on their faces, everyone, including Duan Ling Tian, widened their eyes. Some of them had fear in their eyes as well. Wang Ju's anger was like a fire that had been doused with water as soon as these words left Ji Yuchun's mouth. If he was the disciple of one of the other 4 Silver Flame Elders in Black Turtle Sanctum, it would be okay if he did not give up his house since the other 4 Silver Flame Elders were not so petty as to take offense. However, Lian, who was known as the strongest Silver Flame Elder in the Black Turtle Sanctum, was different. He was famous for being vengeful in the Black Turtle Sanctum and the Fire Worship sect. Those who offended him usually did not have a good ending. For this reason, in the Black Turtle Sanctum and the Fire Worship sect, no one would offend Lian and his disciples unless they had someone stronger as a backing. This was the reason why Wang Ju's anger had disappeared. He shuddered when he heard Lian's name. He's Elder Lian's disciple. It has been a long time since Elder Lian had last taken in a disciple. Why did he suddenly accept a new disciple who only has a green innate spiritual root? As far as I know, Elder Lian's 3 other disciples have blue innate spiritual roots. Why would Elder Lian take someone with only a green innate spiritual root as his disciple? Many of the senior disciples were baffled when they heard Ji Yuchun's words. Since when did Elder Lian's judgment become so bad? Naturally, they did not think Ji Yuchun was lying since no one from the Black Turtle Sanctum would dare to joke using Elder Lian's name. What's going on? How did Ji Yuchun become Elder Lian's disciple? Don't tell me it's because his performance is so outstanding during the strength assessment that Elder Lian took a liking to him. The group of new disciples who possessed yellow innate spiritual roots looked at the new disciples with green innate spiritual roots curiously. It was as though they were trying to get answers from them. When the senior disciples heard this discussion, they turned to look at the new disciples with green innate spiritual roots. Ji Yu-chun did not perform outstandingly well during the strength assessment. The only reason he managed to become Elder Li An's disciple is due to his promise to Elder Li An to help him deal with Duan Ling Tian. One of the new disciples with green innate spiritual roots replied indignantly. When he spoke, he had intentionally looked at Duan Ling Tian. It's all because of Duan Ling Tian. All the new disciples instantly shifted their eyes to Duan Ling Tian. My goodness, how much does Elder Li An hate Duan Ling Tian? Just because Ji Yu-chun flattered him and told him he would help him deal with Duan Ling Tian, he took him as a disciple. It seems like he's really furious over the fact that Duan Ling Tian killed his best friend's son in front of him. That's ridiculous. Elder Li An is not that petty, right? Isn't this ridiculous? The group of new disciples looked at Duan Ling Tian strangely as they whispered among themselves. They were not the only ones who found it baffling. Even Duan Ling Tian was dumbfounded when he learned of the reason Li An had taken Ji Yu-chun as a disciple. It was a little too much, was it not? At the same time, the senior disciples finally understood what was going on when they heard about how Duan Ling Tian had killed Yongwu, the son of the Northern Plethora sect's fifth elder. He was also Elder Li An's best friend. The senior disciples looked at Duan Ling Tian with approval. Someone who dared to oppose Elder Li An regardless of the consequences was someone they sincerely admired. Elder Li An must hate him very much. To think he arbitrarily accepted a disciple with a green innate spiritual root just to seek revenge from him. The senior disciples were confused as well. In the end, they only concluded that Elder Li An hated Duan Ling Tian very much. Meanwhile, some of the new disciples standing near Duan Ling Tian began to move away from him, avoiding him as though he was a plague. I admit defeat. At the same time, Wang Ju, who had suppressed his anger, took the initiative to surrender out of fear toward Silver Flame Elder Li An. Subsequently, he left his tertius house dejectedly with his head hung low. Those who can adapt and act according to the situation are wise. Ji Yu-chun said arrogantly. The moment his words left his mouth, he shifted his cold gaze from Wang Ju to Duan Ling. Other people thought Li An had taken him as his disciple because he had flattered him and promised him to help him seek revenge from Duan Ling Tian. However, only he knew there was another reason as well. He had told him he would be able to recommend another person with green innate spiritual root who would be 100% willing to become his disciple. Ji Yu-chun had promised Li An this through voice transmission. Humph. When Duan Ling Tian saw Ji Yu-chun enter the tertius house and was about to shut the door, he snorted coldly. Then he appeared in front of the tertius house quickly and lifted his hand to stop the door from closing. Chapter 1913. Ji Yu-chun entered the tertius house and was about to close the door when he saw a flash before his eyes. A figure had appeared in front of his door and stopped him from closing the door. His eyes landed on the figure. When he saw the figure stopping him from closing the door was none other than Duan Ling Tian, a hint of dread appeared in his eyes. Earlier, he had learned from the people who had participated in the strength assessment with Duan Ling Tian that Duan Ling Tian's cultivation base was at the early exemplary saint stage. He knew that he was no match for Duan Ling Tian now. Put everything else aside, just the powerful divine ability that Duan Ling Tian had cast during his battle with Yongwu was enough to make Ji Yu-chun feel ashamed of himself. He had no choice but to admit he was no match for Duan Ling Tian. For this reason, Ji Yu-chun felt slightly anxious when he saw Duan Ling Tian. He was no longer arrogant like before when he was speaking to the senior disciple, Wang Ju. What are you trying to do? Although he was no match for Wang Ju as well, he was not afraid Wang Ju would make a move on him since his master was Li An, the strongest elder in the Black Turtle Sanctum. However, Duan Ling Tian was different. Based on his actions yesterday, it was not difficult for him to see that Duan Ling Tian was not afraid of his master, Li An. For this reason, he had subconsciously lowered his voice and his voice had turned softer when he was faced with Duan Ling Tian. Wang Ju was so angered that he almost threw up blood when he saw this. He was a senior disciple, but it seemed as though he was not as scary as a new disciple. He felt as though he had lived in vain. Wang Ju had heard the discussion among the new disciples earlier. He knew the new disciple, Duan Ling Tian, had fallen out with the strongest silver flame elder in the Black Turtle Sanctum, Li An, even though he had just entered the sanctum. Duan Ling Tian did not fear Li An, let alone his disciple, Ji Yu-chun. Duan Ling Tian seems like an okay person. Wang Ju turned to leave. He felt happy when he saw Ji Yu-chun's grave expression. In a way, Duan Ling Tian's actions were akin to seeking revenge for him. For this reason, his regard of Duan Ling Tian had risen. In fact, Wang Ju was not the only one who felt the way. The other senior disciples' opinion of Duan Lingtian rose as well when they saw his actions. They were disgusted by Ji Yuchun, who used someone else's authority to get ahead. However, they did not dare to show their disgust because they were afraid of Lian. They did not expect Duan Lingtian to stand out and do something they did not dare to do. It felt as though he was avenging them. This was why they began to like Duan Lingtian. Even the new disciples who thought Duan Lingtian was only pretending to be young changed their opinion when they saw his actions. Duan Lingtian did not expect the people's opinion would change so quickly. What am I trying to do? Duan Lingtian sneered when he saw the anxious Ji Yuchun. What should I do? I've taken a liking to your courteous house. I want to challenge you. Upon hearing that, horror dawned on Ji Yuchun. He could not help but tremble when he saw Duan Lingtian's cold and sharp gaze. A wise man doesn't fight when the odds are against him. I'll let him have his way for now and deal with him later. It's no loss for me to yield and give him this courteous house. With my backing, I can stay in any courteous house I want. Ji Yuchun walked out of the house as soon as he thought of this. It was obvious he was going to yield and give the house to Duan Lingtian. This person is Elder Lian's new disciple. He's an embarrassment to Elder Lian. If I were Elder Lian, I would cut off ties with him. Doesn't he find it embarrassing? He has the green innate spiritual root, and yet, he's acting so cowardly in front of someone with a yellow innate spiritual root. When the senior disciples and new disciples saw Ji Yuchun leaving the courteous house without putting up a fight, they began to mock Ji Yuchun to their heart's content. Since there were so many of them mocking Ji Yuchun, they were not afraid Lian would seek revenge from them. Ji Yuchun's expression turned graver when he heard their words. He fisted his hands and gritted his teeth as a vein appeared on his forehead. It was obvious he was angry and mortified. Endure. I must endure this. Currently, I'm no match for him at all. If I attack him now, I'll only suffer. I have to endure this for now. I can always seek revenge from him when I get stronger. Ji Yuchun thought to himself as he gritted his teeth. He was consoling himself inwardly. He only has a yellow innate spiritual root, and I have a green innate spiritual root. It won't be difficult for me to surpass him. In Ji Yuchun's opinion, it was only a matter of time before he surpassed Duan Lingtian, since his innate spiritual root was superior in comparison to Duan Lingtian's innate spiritual root. If he raised his cultivation base and became stronger, was there a need for him to be afraid of Duan Lingtian's divine ability at that time? Although Duan Lingtian was heavily injured yesterday, he managed to kill Yongwu when he cast the divine ability, the elementary devouring tactic. Ji Yuchun might not have known what divine ability it was, but it left a great impression on him. It was also because of this he knew he was no match for Duan Lingtian even if their cultivation base was at the same level. Did I say you can leave? Duan Lingtian said when Ji Yuchun walked out of the courteous house to leave. He looked at Ji Yuchun coldly. Ji Yuchun came to a halt when he heard Duan Lingtian's words. Ji Yuchun had targeted him since the beginning. However, he did not take offense. Who would have thought Ji Yuchun would try to get into Lian's good grace by promising he would work with him to destroy Duan Lingtian? He had used Duan Lingtian's name to become Lian's disciple. Was there a need for Duan Lingtian to be courteous to Ji Yuchun when Ji Yuchun had made it clear he was working with Lian to deal with him? Duan Lingtian, I have yielded and given you the courteous house. What more do you want? Ji Yuchun turned to look at Duan Lingtian, who was approaching him. Horror dawned on him as he retreated a few steps in panic. Due to his fear, his aura was easily suppressed by Duan Lingtian. He could not resist at all. Every step Duan Lingtian took felt like he was stepping on his heart. Don't act recklessly. My master is Silver Flame Elder Lian. His position is just below Lord Sanctum Leader. Ji Yuchun panicked when he saw Duan Lingtian approaching him. He began to speak whatever came to his mind. At this moment, he seemed to have forgotten that Duan Lingtian was not afraid of his master, Lian, at all since the beginning. Relax, I won't kill you. The fire worship sect's law forbids me from killing you. I'm just going to teach you a lesson you won't forget, Duan Lingtian said indifferently. His voice became softer and softer until Ji Yuchun was the only one who could hear it in the end. No, Ji Yuchun cried out in horror before he stopped speaking abruptly. At the moment when he stopped speaking, he was enveloped by a golden light. The Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples present on the scene could not see what was going on due to the golden light. However, they could tell this bright light that suddenly appeared was Duan Lingtian's territory. What territory is this? Put aside the force of the territory for the moment, just the dazzling golden light was enough to block their sights. Duan Lingtian is not going to kill him, right? A Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple asked in shock. I don't think so. One would be severely punished if one were to break the rules in the fire worship sect by killing and maiming another person. A senior disciple said. Unfortunately, Duan Lingtian's territory is too blinding. I can't see anything at all. I wonder what he's doing. I suspect he's blocking our sights on purpose. Based on this, I'm sure Ji Yu-chun is doomed. It serves him right for trying to masquerade as a lion. A hint of delight could be heard in the voices of the senior disciples and new disciples as they discussed among themselves. The golden light in front of them was none other than the 10,000 sword territory. It was formed from the Sun Saint energy, and it was as bright as the sun. Inside the 10,000 sword territory, Duan Lingtian stood very still. Ji Yu-chun had fainted next to his leg. He was like a lamb that was waiting to be slaughtered. Naturally, Duan Lingtian did not intend to kill him. However, there was a reason why he had blocked everyone's sight. Elder Huo, if I want to devour his innate spiritual root, what should I do next? Duan Lingtian asked Elder Huo, revealing his intention. Ji Yu-chun's green innate spiritual root was a level higher than his yellow innate spiritual root. If he could devour Ji Yu-chun's green innate spiritual root, theoretically, his yellow innate spiritual root would turn into a green innate spiritual root. Duan Lingtian was not sure if it would work. His was anxious as he waited for Elder Huo's answer. Soon after, Elder Huo replied, with your current cultivation base, there's no way for you to locate his innate spiritual root using your divine consciousness, so I'll use mine to guide your divine consciousness to look for his innate spiritual root. When you find it, you can cast the elementary devouring tactic. Okay. Duan Lingtian immediately agreed to Elder Huo's suggestion. At the same time, he took a deep breath as he prayed inwardly, I hope this method works. If possible, I really don't want to waste my strength looking for the spiritual items that are scattered all over the place. Chapter 1914. When Elder Huo imparted his knowledge about spiritual items that could raise the level of innate spiritual roots to Duan Lingtian so he could identify them when he looked for them, Duan Lingtian discovered that he had never heard of or seen these spiritual items before. For this reason, he knew it was going to be extremely difficult for him to find them. He did not want to search for the spiritual items if there was another way to raise the level of his innate spiritual root. He was elated when he heard he could devour other people's innate spiritual roots using the high-grade divine ability, the elementary devouring tactic, to strengthen his innate spiritual root. However, this was only in theory. Duan Lingtian would have to discover it for himself to see if it worked or not. Ji Yu-chun, you can only blame yourself for trying to go against me. If you didn't try to oppose me, I wouldn't have set my eyes on your innate spiritual root. Duan Lingtian looked at Ji Yu-chun whom he had knocked out. He raised an eyebrow as he said indifferently, you came knocking on my door asking to be a lab rat. Don't get angry at me, okay? Elder Huo, Duan Lingtian asked Elder Huo, what should I do now? Is there anything I should look out for? This was his first time trying to devour an innate spiritual root. He could only ask Elder Huo since he did not know anything about the process of devouring an innate spiritual root. Perhaps, Elder Huo might not know how to devour an innate spiritual root using the elementary devouring tactic, nor did he see it before as well. However, he must have heard about it before. Place your palm on his head and then fuse your divine consciousness with his soul. I'll guide you with my divine consciousness and locate his innate spiritual root. When we find it, you can use your divine consciousness to capture it before you cast the elementary devouring tactic using your hand that's placed on his head, Elder Huo said to Duan Lingtian. Okay. Duan Lingtian did not question Elder Huo and immediately squatted down and placed his right hand on Ji Yu-chun's head. Duan Lingtian was filled with anxiety, and his heart was beating very fast. He would soon find out if this method worked or not. If it worked, he would be able to raise the level of his innate spiritual root quickly. If he failed, he would have no choice but to look for the spiritual items and slowly raise the level of his innate spiritual root. The speed of him raising the level of his innate spiritual root would affect him greatly since it dictated his cultivation speed. If his cultivation speed was fast, it meant he could get stronger faster and save Ka and his daughter soon. If his cultivation speed was slow, it would take him a long time to save Ka and his daughter. I hope it will turn out well. No, it must turn out well. I must succeed. Duan Lingtian thought to himself repeatedly as his divine consciousness entered Ji Yuchun's mind under Elder Huo's guidance. Duan Lingtian could not wait to devour Ji Yuchun's innate spiritual root and strengthen his own innate spiritual root. Two divine consciousness entered Ji Yuchun's soul. His innate spiritual root is located just ahead of us. With your current cultivation base, it's impossible for you to sense its presence using your divine consciousness. However, now that we're in his soul, you'll be able to sense its subtle aura as long you remain calm. The aura contains a little of the heaven and earth spirit energy. Now, try and see if you can sense it, Elder Huo said to Duan Lingtian as his divine consciousness stopped moving. Alright, Duan Lingtian replied. He stopped moving his divine consciousness as well and began to sense the aura around him using his divine consciousness. Initially, he could not sense anything special with his divine consciousness. However, under Elder Huo's guidance, he finally managed to locate Ji Yuchun's green innate spiritual root. I found his innate spiritual root. Elder Huo, what should I do next? Duan Lingtian quickly asked Elder Huo as he tried to suppress his excitement. Elder Huo might be able to easily sense the aura of Ji Yuchun's innate spiritual root, but it was not easy for Duan Lingtian to sense it. It would have been impossible for him to locate Ji Yuchun's innate spiritual root without Elder Huo's guidance. For this reason, Duan Lingtian was very excited when he discovered his divine consciousness had found Ji Yuchun's innate spiritual root. After you capture his innate spiritual root with your divine consciousness, you can cast the elementary devouring tactic with your right hand and let it enter him. Guide it to his innate spiritual root. This process won't be difficult once you've captured his innate spiritual root, Elder Huo said in response to Duan Lingtian's question. The moment Elder Huo finished speaking, Duan Lingtian quickly did as he was told. Elementary devouring tactic. This was not Duan Lingtian's first time casting the divine ability, the elementary devouring tactic. However, previously, there were no technical skills needed when he devoured the heaven and earth spirit energy in his surroundings. Devouring Ji Yuchun's innate spiritual root with the elementary devouring tactic would need skills since he was not just devouring the heaven and earth spirit energy but someone's innate spiritual root. The innate spiritual root was hidden deep in one's soul. If one was not at the saint celestial stage or above, it would be impossible for one to sense its presence through divine consciousness, let alone capturing it. However, with Elder Huo's guidance, Duan Lingtian managed to successfully capture Ji Yuchun's innate spiritual root. The entire process was very easy. Devour. Duan Lingtian thought to himself as the elementary devouring tactic brushed against Ji Yuchun's innate spiritual root. He controlled it as it swept out at the innate spiritual root that had been captured by his divine consciousness. Initially, Ji Yuchun's innate spiritual root was shining with a faint green light, but it was completely extinguished by the elementary devouring tactic. Ji Yuchun's innate spiritual root had disappeared just like this. Elder Huo, I've already devoured his innate spiritual root. I can sense a special energy. It must be the energy from the innate spiritual root after I have devoured it. However, this energy seems to be leaking continuously. I've already brought the energy to my soul. What should I do now? Duan Lingtian asked Elder Huo as he brought the energy back to his own body and soul. His innate spiritual root was also hidden in his soul. Even without Elder Huo telling him, he knew he should bring the energy back to his own body. Guide the energy into your soul and fuse it with your innate spiritual root. It's alright if you can't sense your innate spiritual root. You only need to bring the energy close to your innate spiritual root. It won't destroy your innate spiritual root. Let your innate spiritual root absorb the energy from his innate spiritual root, Elder Huo said. We'll have to wait and see if you can raise the level of your innate spiritual root after that since I can't guarantee that it'll work. Since the beginning, Elder Huo had already said he was uncertain if this method would really work. It was theoretical. Duan Lingtian had already mentally prepared himself for it. We'll just have to wait and see if it works. Duan Lingtian knew he would find out in the next moment whether this method was a success or not when he heard Elder Huo's words. His heart was beating very fast. He had done everything according to Elder Huo's instruction. Elder Huo, the energy from Ji Yuchun's green innate spiritual root seems to have disappeared. I've already withdrawn the devouring energy, can you help me see if there are any changes to my innate spiritual root? Duan Lingtian asked Elder Huo anxiously after he had taken a deep breath. He could not wait to find out what the results were. If you want to know if there are any changes to your innate spiritual root, why don't you try resonating with the heaven and earth spirit energy? His green innate spiritual root should be a great nourishment to your yellow innate spiritual root. Elder Huo said, if you have successfully devoured his innate spiritual root, the speed of you resonating with the heaven and earth spirit energy will be much faster than before. Duan Lingtian immediately tried to resonate the heaven and earth spirit energy when he heard Elder Huo's words. Soon after, Duan Lingtian was frozen. He stood rooted to the ground as though he was scared of something. Then, a bright smile appeared on his face. It was obvious that he was wild with joy. Elder Huo, the speed of me resonating with the heaven and earth spirit energy seems to be 2 times faster than before. Does this mean it's a success? Duan Lingtian was excited. However, he did not dare to have high hopes. I'll take a look at your innate spiritual root. As soon as Elder Huo finished speaking, Duan Lingtian felt a powerful divine consciousness entering his soul. Duan Lingtian did not resist and let it enter his soul. It's a success, Elder Huo said. Duan Lingtian became excited when he got the confirmation from Elder Huo. His face was red with excitement. It's a success. It's really a success. For the reason that many things were hinging on his success, he lost his composure when he learned that it was a success. Yes, it's a success. However, your innate spiritual root did not turn green. Originally, your innate spiritual root was yellow, now it has turned darker. Although it did not turn into a green innate spiritual root yet, there are still some changes to it. If you want to change your innate spiritual root into a green innate spiritual root, you'll need to devour another green innate spiritual root at least. Elder Huo said. Chapter 19:15. It has not transformed into a green innate spiritual root yet. Duan Lingtian widened his eyes in shock when he heard Elder Huo's words. My innate spiritual root hasn't turned green, but my speed of resonating with the heaven and earth spirit energy is already 2 times faster than before. Once my innate spiritual root turns green, does it mean that my speed of resonating with the heaven and earth spirit energy will be even faster? Duan Lingtian gasped when he thought of this. He did not think there was such a huge difference between a green and yellow innate spiritual root. If the green innate spiritual root is so amazing, won't the blue, indigo, and violet innate spiritual roots be even more amazing? Duan Lingtian's breathing quickened when he thought of this. The method of devouring other people's innate spiritual roots with the divine ability, the elementary devouring tactic, to strengthen my innate spiritual root is a success. In other words, as long as I devour enough innate spiritual roots, my innate spiritual root would be able to turn blue, indigo, and even the rare violet. The speed of resonating and absorbing the heaven and earth spirit energy with a green innate spiritual root is at least several times faster than my previous speed. If I have the violet innate spiritual root, the speed is going to be ridiculously fast. With the help of the violet innate spiritual root and the time flow in the 4th level of the 7 treasures exquisite pagoda, who in the Tao Martial Saint Land would be able to match my cultivation speed? As Duan Lingtian's train of thoughts shifted its course, his eyes lit up. He felt as though his future was going to be very bright. Naturally, to achieve all that, I'll have to transform my innate spiritual root into a violet innate spiritual root. Duan Lingtian finally calmed down after a long time as he recalled what had happened earlier. Ji Yuchun possessed the green innate spiritual root. By right, when I devoured his green innate spiritual root with my yellow innate spiritual root, my innate spiritual root should have turned green. However, much of the energy from Ji Yuchun's green innate spiritual root had dissipated when I was devouring it. In fact, it's likely that I only devoured half of the energy from his green innate spiritual root. This must be why my innate spiritual root did not turn green. Elder Huo said that my innate spiritual root that was originally yellow has turned darker. I can sense that my speed of resonating and absorbing the heaven and earth spirit energy is 2 times faster. It seems like the yellow spiritual root is further divided into several ranks. There are yellow and dark yellow innate spiritual roots, so there must be light yellow spiritual roots as well. Duan Lingtian thought long and hard about this. I really want to see what kind of expression Ji Yuchun would make when he discovers the speed of him absorbing the heaven and earth spirit energy becomes slower than a tortoise. I'm sure even in his wildest dreams he did not think I would be able to devour his green innate spiritual root. Duan Lingtian sneered as he looked at Ji Yuchun, who was lying unconscious on the ground. He did not feel remorse devouring Ji Yuchun's innate spiritual root. If he allowed Ji Yuchun to grow stronger, he would only become a threat to him in the future. It was better for him to kill such an enemy in the cradle. Swish, 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 swish. With just a thought, the 10,000 golden swords in the 10,000 sword territory flew around Ji Yu-chun and left 10,000 cuts on his body. However, these cuts were superficial, and he did not bleed much. Although the 10,000 sword rays only injured Ji Yu-chun lightly, it was extremely painful. The sharp and intense pain woke Ji Yu-chun up as he yelled. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian withdrew the 10,000 swords territory. His figure, along with Ji Yu-chun's injured figure, instantly appeared before the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples' eyes. The Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples could not help but gasp when they saw Ji Yu-chun's body that was covered in cuts. Their eyes were filled with dread when they looked at Duan Lingtian again. They did not think Duan Lingtian would be so ruthless. Although the wounds on Ji Yu-chun's body would not kill or maim him, the pain he felt must have been excruciating. This could be seen from Ji Yu-chun's expression. With your strength, you think it's enough to promise Lian that you'll deal with me. You've overestimated your strength. Duan Lingtian looked at Ji Yu-chun coldly before he entered the courteous house he had snatched from him. The crowd only shifted their attention to Ji Yu-chun after Duan Lingtian had closed the door. When they saw the wretched expression on Ji Yu-chun's face and heard his scream, they shuddered. Duan Lingtian's really ruthless. Unless it's absolutely necessary, it's better for us to stay out of his way. He's a lunatic who doesn't even fear Elder Lian. You know what I think. Instead of Duan Lingtian, he should call himself Crazy Duan. The crowd regained their senses and began to whisper among themselves. A hint of dread could be seen in their eyes as well. From this moment onward, Duan Lingtian's name began to spread among the almost 10,000 Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples. Duan Lingtian was naturally unaware of this. After he entered the Tertius house, he instantly went in the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. I've not been on the 4th level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda after it's repaired. I'll go and have a look now. Duan Lingtian did not have an opportunity to enter the 4th level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda after it was repaired. Now that he found a place to stay in the Black Turtle Sanctum, he finally found a chance to enter the 4th level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. The heaven and earth spirit energy is really rich. As soon as Duan Lingtian entered the 4th level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, he instantly sensed how rich the heaven and earth spirit energy was. The heaven and earth spirit energy was more than 2 times richer than the heaven and earth spirit energy in the Tertius house that had 3 spirit gathering formations. Duan Lingtian knew this was all thanks to the 3 spirit gathering formations in the Tertius house. Since the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda was located inside the Tertius house, its cultivation environment was naturally affected by the cultivation environment of the Tertius house. This was greatly beneficial to Duan Lingtian. The 4th level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, Duan Lingtian began to look around the 4th level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. He saw fog everywhere he looked. Only an inkstone that was neither big nor small floated in the middle of the 4th level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. There was a black ruler on top of the inkstone. The ruler was 3 foot long. Duan Lingtian could not look away from the ruler as soon as he saw it. This is the celestial supreme treasure of the 4th level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, the universe ruler. After a long while, Duan Lingtian took a deep breath when he regained his senses. His gaze was burning as he looked at the ruler. He had long heard about the 7 treasures inside the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda from Elder Huo. The celestial supreme treasure on the 4th level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda was none other than the universe ruler. According to Elder Huo, the celestial supreme treasure would be higher in grade the higher the level it was on. It was said that the War Heaven Spear that was stored on the 7th level of Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda could even conquer the universe. Just how strong was it to be able to conquer the universe? Although the universe ruler is not heavier than a sword, I don't think he'll be able to lift it yet. Duan Lingtian attempted to lift the universe ruler with all his might, but he only managed to move it slightly. He was already panting even though it had only moved a little. Apart from the Jasper Celestial Sword that I can wield easily thanks to the Sovereign Heart Sword, I'll have to break through to the Saint Celestial stage if I want to use the other Celestial Supreme Treasures in the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. Even if I break through to the Saint Celestial stage, I might not be able to use the other 5 Celestial Supreme Treasures in the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. They are weapons used by Celestials after all. A Celestial was a powerhouse who was even stronger than Saint Celestial stage powerhouses. When a Saint Celestial stage powerhouse had cultivated to the last form, the 9th form, Celestial Ascension form, he would have to undergo the Celestial Ascension Calamity. He would only be considered as a true celestial after he had undergone transcendence to the Devata realms. Celestials were different from human. Their lives were infinitely long if they did not encounter any mishaps. However, apart from the celestials, in the Tao Martial Saint land, the people whose cultivation base had already entered the Saint Celestial Stage's seventh form, the heaven-defying form, also had an infinitely long lifespan. It was called the heaven-defying form because it defied the lifespan that had been determined by heaven. Now that I managed to transform my innate spiritual root, coupled with the cultivation environment, my cultivation speed is going to be much faster. Duan Lingtian thought to himself as he sat cross-legged in the air and began to cast the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique to absorb the heaven and earth spirit energy. It quickly circulated a great chi cycle to raise his cultivation base, delighting Duan Lingtian. What a fast cultivation speed! With my cultivation speed, I'll be able to break through to the intermediate Divine Saint stage in just 2 years. Duan Lingtian felt extremely confident. Naturally, 2 years referred to 2 years in the 4th level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. 2 years in the 4th level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda were only 2 months outside of the pagoda. Chapter 1916. Everyone knew that cultivating would only get more difficult the further one progressed. If Duan Lingtian was still restricted by his innate spiritual root and his cultivation environment, he would not be able to break through to the intermediate Divine Saint stage from the early Divine Saint stage without at least taking 8 to 10 years. However, because he had raised the level of his innate spiritual root and the amazing cultivation environment he had, it would only take him 2 years to break through to the intermediate Divine Saint stage from the early Divine Saint stage. If I have a green innate spiritual root now, my cultivation speed would be much faster. If I have an indigo innate spiritual root, it'll only take me a few months to break through to the intermediate Divine Saint stage from the early Divine Saint stage in this cultivation environment. Duan Lingtian's breathing quickened when he thought of this. He could not wait to find a genius with an indigo innate spiritual root so he could devour his innate spiritual root. Even in the fire worship sect, I don't think there are many geniuses who have indigo innate spiritual roots. I wonder if there are any geniuses with violet innate spiritual roots in the fire worship sect. I'm certain if I devour a violet innate spiritual root, my innate spiritual root will turn dark indigo even if half of the energy is wasted. A dark indigo innate spiritual root was just a step below the violet innate spiritual roots. Duan Lingtian became excited when he thought of this and found it hard to concentrate on cultivating. At this moment, all he wanted to do was to look for people so he could devour their innate spiritual roots to strengthen his innate spiritual root. Naturally, Duan Lingtian only thought about it. He had no intention of casually devouring people's innate spiritual roots. He was not a cold-blooded animal so he would not devour other people's innate spiritual roots for no reason if they did not look for trouble with him. Since I can't calm down, I might as well go and take a look at the altar. I can also familiarize myself with the palaces around the altar and try to comprehend the high-grade defensive divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier. Duan Lingtian muttered to himself as he left the 4th level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda with just a thought. He left the Tertius house after he put the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda away. When he walked out of the Tertius house, he discovered the people gathered outside had already left. Only a few Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples were standing there discussing something. The people did not notice him at all since he had appeared quietly. I wonder how long it'll take my heart that has been tempered by the Sovereign Hard Sword to comprehend the number 1 defensive divine ability in the fire worship sect, the Black Turtle's Barrier. It won't be longer than the time I took to comprehend the divine ability, the elementary devouring tactic, right? As Duan Lingtian made his way to the altar, his mind was completely focused on the high-grade defensive divine ability Black, the Turtle's Barrier, in the Black Turtle Sanctum. Although he had already become famous in the Black Turtle Sanctum and many disciples from the Black Turtle Sanctum had heard of him, they did not recognize him since he had just entered the sanctum. Hey, did you hear about it? There's a rebel in our Black Turtle Sanctum. You mean Duan Lingtian? You've heard about it. Apart from outsiders and disciples who haven't come out of their closed-door cultivation, I think everyone in the Black Turtle Sanctum has heard of him, right? I've been in the Black Turtle Sanctum for 6 years now, but this is my first time hearing about a disciple bold enough to oppose Elder Lian in public. Elder Lian is the first Silver Flame Elder in the Black Turtle Sanctum. Even the other 4 Silver Flame Elder don't dare to offend him for no reason. That's right, Elder Lian is only inferior to 1 person as he ruled over 10,000 people in the Black Turtle Sanctum. Duan Lingtian wouldn't have a happy ending for opposing him. Well, it'll be okay if he has a blue or indigo innate spiritual root, but I heard he only has a yellow innate spiritual root. A yellow innate spiritual root? Someone with a yellow innate spiritual root dares to openly oppose Elder Lian. He's seeking death. As Duan Lingtian made his way to the altar, he heard many similar discussions. Not only that, but news of him torturing Ji Yu-chun, Lian's new disciple, had spread out as well. Most of the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples felt that Duan Lingtian would at least be flayed, if not killed, for offending Lian. Duan Lingtian merely shook his head with a calm expression on his face when he heard the discussion. He was not bothered by it at all. Yesterday, Yang Wu, the son of the fifth elder of Northern Plethora sect, had looked for trouble with him, and the Black Turtle Sanctum's Silver Flame elder, Teng Shan, had acted fairly when he meted out punishment. The incident would have had a happy ending if it had ended there. However, Lian had appeared and wanted to kill him without thinking about what was right or wrong. He had said that it took two people to quarrel and accused Duan Lingtian of being at fault as well. If Elder Teng Shan did not intervene in time, and if he was not physically strong, he would have been killed by Lian's strike. For this reason, he had regarded Lian as his enemy and did not care about Lian's threat when he killed Yang Wu. He had killed Yang Wu domineeringly under everyone's watchful gaze. By doing that, he was clearly opposing Lian. Since both he and Lian would not rest until one of them died, it was no loss for him even if he further offended Lian. The Black Turtle Altar. Soon after, the altar on the vast field appeared before Duan Lingtian's eyes. The huge and lifelike Black Turtle statue caught his attention immediately. The high-grade defensive divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier, is recorded in the Black Turtle statue. Duan Lingtian thought to himself as he flew to the Black Turtle statue. At this moment, many people were comprehending the high-grade defensive divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier, around the Black Turtle statue. Most of them were standing or sitting on air. Some of them closed their eyes as though they were deep in thoughts while some of them stared at the Black Turtle statue as though they were in a daze. I'll take a look at the divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier, recorded in the Black Turtle statue. Duan Lingtian felt confident when he remembered that his heart had been tempered by the Sovereign Heart Sword. I can memorize the high-grade defensive divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier, first and slowly comprehend it when I return to the Tertius house and enter the fourth level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. I'll be able to save a lot of time by doing that. After all, the flow of time is really slow in the fourth level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. Duan Lingtian thought to himself as he looked at the Black Turtle statue. As he extended his divine consciousness into the Black Turtle statue, a wave of information began to slowly appear in his mind. It was information regarding the high-grade defensive divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier. Duan Lingtian could clearly sense that at that instant when he extended his divine consciousness into the Black Turtle statue, a heavy aura suddenly swept out of the Black Turtle statue. This aura pressured him as it shrouded him. He instinctively used his Sun Saint energy to cover the surface of his body. It's the same with the others. Previously, Duan Lingtian did not notice that most of the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples around the Black Turtle altar had a layer of defensive saint energy that covered their bodies. If I'm not mistaken, this aura must help one in comprehending the Black Turtle's Barrier. No wonder so many of them stay here and didn't return to their own residence to comprehend the divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier. Even so, this aura doesn't feel special to me. After standing near the Black Turtle statue for some time, Duan Lingtian discovered the aura from the Black Turtle statue did not help him at all. He made up his mind to leave as soon as he memorized the Black Turtle's Barrier. I'll go back and slowly comprehend it. As long as I can successfully comprehend the Black Turtle's Barrier, I can leave the Black Turtle Sanctum and enter the Fire Worship Sect's Saint Land. Duan Lingtian no longer had the mood to stay near the altar when he thought about this. He turned around and left. His wife and daughter were still imprisoned in the Fire Worship Sect's Saint Land and were knee-deep in trouble. After Duan Lingtian returned to the Tertius house, he entered the fourth level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda again and began to comprehend the Black Turtle's Barrier. One must admit that as the most precious treasure in the Black Turtle Sanctum and the #1 defensive divine ability in the Fire Worship Sect, it was indeed difficult to comprehend. At the very least, after Duan Lingtian tried to comprehend it in the fourth level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda for 6 months, he had only managed to scratch the surface of the divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier. He was still far from fully comprehending the Black Turtle's Barrier. It's actually much more difficult to comprehend than the elementary devouring tactic. Duan Lingtian was shocked when he discovered this. He felt baffled as well. However, soon after, he discovered the cause. When I was in the divine ability relic that contained the divine ability elementary devouring tactic, I saw someone using the elementary devouring tactic and even experienced the effect of the elementary devouring tactic. For this reason, apart from the help of the Sovereign Heart Sword, I managed to quickly comprehend the elementary devouring tactic. Whether it's the divine ability, the elementary devouring tactic, or the divine ability, the otherworldly celestial, I saw how they were cast. That's why I have some advantage when I comprehended the two high-grade divine abilities. Duan Lingtian thought to himself and sighed. Half a year, about 18 days have gone by outside. Duan Lingtian closed his eyes again to comprehend the divine ability, the Black Turtle's barrier. Meanwhile, in another Tertius house, Ji Yuchun who had recovered also began to cultivate. Duan Lingtian, after I break through to the intermediate exemplary saint stage, I'll definitely make you regret what you did to me that day. Ji Yuchun began to cultivate in earnest for the sake of revenge. However, when he tried to resonate with and absorb the heaven and earth spirit energy, horror dawned on his face. What's going on? Why can't I sense the heaven and earth spirit energy? Comment 0. Comment first. Rate this chapter. Vote with Power Stone. Chapter 1918. Ji Yuchun that has gone insane. Impossible. Impossible. I'll try again. Try again. I can do it. I can definitely do it. I have a green innate spiritual root. It's impossible that I can't sense the heaven and earth spirit energy. Ji Yuchun took a deep breath and suppressed the rising panic within him. He felt as though he was going crazy as he tried to calm himself down so he could try and sense the heaven and earth spirit energy in the Tertius house. Due to the reason there were 3 spirit gathering formations in the Tertius house, the heaven and earth spirit energy in there was richer than it was outside. Even then, Ji Yuchun could not sense any heaven and earth spirit energy no matter how hard he tried. It felt as though he was in a room devoid of heaven and earth spirit energy. Something must be wrong. Continue. Continue. Ji Yuchun began to panic again. He gritted his teeth and continued trying to sense the heaven and earth spirit energy. Although he could not be considered as a genius, he was still above ordinary people since he possessed a green innate spiritual root. With that, he had a high chance of breaking through to the Saint Celestial stage in the future. At that time, if he was willing to stay in the fire worship sect, he might even become a bronze flame elder. Ji Yuchun did not doubt that his future was bright prior to this. However, at this moment, despair began to rise in his heart. Found it. At the moment when Ji Yuchun was about to give up in despair, he sensed the heaven and earth spirit energy and tried to guide it into his body. After a while, he was shocked. Not only was the heaven and earth spirit energy that he sensed extremely weak, but his speed when he guided the heaven and earth spirit energy into his body was extremely slow as well. It was slower than a tortoise. Impossible. Impossible. I'm a martial cultivator with a green innate spiritual root. This can't be my speed of absorbing heaven and earth spirit energy. Even someone with a red innate spiritual root wouldn't be so slow when sensing and absorbing the heaven and earth spirit energy. Ji Yuchun began to panic again. He continued to struggle with detecting in the heaven and earth spirit energy. However, a day went by, 2 days went by. After 3 days and 3 nights had gone by, he discovered his speed of detecting and absorbing the heaven and earth spirit energy was still so slow. Bang! A loud bang resonated in the air as Ji Yuchun destroyed the door of the Tertius house when he went out. He seemed to have gone crazy, and it naturally attracted many people's attention. What's wrong with Ji Yuchun? Look at him, he looks crazy. He didn't go crazy, did he? It does seem like he has gone crazy. Huh, why is he going to the pool? Soon after, the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples discovered Ji Yuchun who seemed like he had gone crazy was making his way to the pool nearby. He stopped by the side of the pool and lied on the ground. Then he lifted his head to look in the pool as though there was a treasure in there. Naturally, everyone knew there was no treasure in the pool. Even if there was, it would have been taken away by other people a long time ago. It would not stay there, waiting for Ji Yuchun to pick it up. Upon seeing the familiar face reflected in the pool, Ji Yuchun became agitated again. He looked like he had gone crazy as he muttered to himself, I'm still me. That's right, I'm still me, but why is my speed in sensing and absorbing the heaven and earth spirit energy so slow? Even someone with a red innate spiritual root wouldn't be so slow. What happened? Why is this happening to me? Initially, he had thought his soul had entered the body of someone with low innate talent. However, when he looked into the pool, he saw that he was in his body. After a moment, Ji Yu-chun finally managed to calm himself down. After he calmed down, the figure of a handsome young man with dashing brows and bright eyes appeared in his mind. It's him. It must be him. The figure that appeared in his mind was none other than Duan Ling Tian. After he knocked me out, I didn't cultivate for more than 20 days in order to recover. When I began to cultivate today, I discovered my speed in sensing and absorbing the heaven and earth spirit energy is ridiculously slow. Ji Yu-chun thought to himself as he gritted his teeth. Then, he looked for some of the new disciples who were present on the day he was knocked out. He was desperate to find out and understand what had happened that day. Although the new disciples disliked Ji Yu-chun, they did not dare to protest since he was first Silver Flame Elder Li An's disciple. They told him everything they knew. Duan Ling Tian consolidated his territory and blocked everyone's sights before I was knocked out. Ji Yu-chun narrowed his eyes as he began to recall some of the things that had happened after listening to the new disciples. Based on what I remember, I passed out as soon as I saw a flash of golden light. In other words, Duan Ling Tian blocked everyone's sights and knocked me out when he consolidated his territory. It's unnecessary for him to knock me out just to consolidate his territory. I'm sure he planned to do something objectionable, that's why he blocked everyone's sights. He must have something to do with my cultivation speed becoming so slow. Ji Yu-chun thought to himself as a chill ran up his spine. Although he did know what Duan Ling Tian did to him, he could not help but shudder when he thought about it. Moreover, he had a feeling his innate spiritual root had been damaged. Otherwise, why would his cultivation speed become so slow? Why did it seem like he had a very low innate talent? Ji Yu-chun knew this had something to do with innate spiritual root because he knew one had to rely on one's innate spiritual root to sense and absorb the heaven and earth spirit energy. Now that his speed of sensing and absorbing the heaven and earth spirit energy had become so slow, it meant that something was wrong with his innate spiritual root. Naturally, he did not know exactly what was wrong. Even then, he could not help but shudder. He had never heard of a person being able to damage another person's innate spiritual root before. Although a Saint Celestial stage powerhouse could sense the location of a person's innate spiritual root, he would not be able to mess with the person's innate spiritual root without injuring his soul. Ji Yu-chun could sense that his soul was in perfect condition. I hope he didn't destroy my innate spiritual root and has merely put a restriction on it. Otherwise, my life is ruined. Ji Yu-chun secretly prayed in his heart. His eyes gleamed coldly as he thought to himself. Duan Ling Tian, when my cousin is here, I'll make sure you die without a grave. At that time, I'll definitely cut you into 1,000 pieces and let you experience the greatest pain in this world before you die. Not only that, but I won't let your 2 companions go as well. I remember how they look like even though they're not in the Black Turtle Sanctum. I'll make sure they die as long they remain in the fire worship sect. You can only blame them for being your companions. A burning hatred rose in Ji Yu-chun's heart, and it spread like wildfire. At this moment, not only was Ji Yu-chun not sorry he looked for trouble with Duan Ling Tian, but he kept muttering about seeking revenge from Duan Ling Tian. As for his innate spiritual root, he felt that his master, the Black Turtle Sanctum's first Silver Flame Elder Li An, would definitely be able to help him. If you really destroy my innate spiritual root, I won't let your 2 companions die a fast and painless death. I'll cut them up and make them watch as I feed their meat to the dogs. It seemed as though Ji Yu-chun had gone crazy again when he thought about how his innate spiritual root might have been destroyed. I'll look for master. After a moment, he left the residence of the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple and made his way east to look for his master, Li An. Why are you in such a state? Li An frowned when he saw how anxious and worried Ji Yu-chun was. A hint of unhappiness flashed across his eyes. In all honesty, he would not have accepted a disciple with a green innate spiritual root. However, this person had promised him something he could not refuse. Ji Yu-chun had promised Li An that he would ask his cousin to become Li An's disciple. According to Ji Yu-chun, his cousin had a blue innate spiritual root, and his cultivation base was at the peak of the exemplary saint stage. He was only a step away from breaking through to the quintessential saint stage. His cousin would be coming to the fire worship sect soon. The fire worship sect had a rule stating that whoever possessed blue spiritual roots or higher could enter the sect at any time and become a disciple of the sect. This rule had been around since ancient times. That was why there were so many powerhouses in the fire worship sect. In the fire worship sect, Even a golden flame elder would be tempted by a genius disciple with a blue innate spiritual root, let alone Lian, who was only a silver flame elder. Lian had been a fire worship sect's silver flame elder for thousands of years. During those years, he had only accepted 3 disciples whom nobody wanted with blue innate spiritual roots. For this reason, when Ji Yu-chun promised to ask his cousin to become his direct disciple, he immediately agreed to Ji Yu-chun's request of becoming his direct disciple. In his opinion, he would only acknowledge Ji Yu-chun's cousin as his disciple. Ji Yu-chun was merely tagging along. "Master, can you please have a look at my innate spiritual root? There seems to be a problem with it." Ji Yu-chun had a panicked expression on his face when he saw Lian. Anxiety filled his heart as well. "Innate spiritual root, how can there be something wrong with it?" Lian said with a frown when he heard Ji Yu-chun's words. He did not do as Ji Yu-chun had requested him. As a Saint Celestial stage powerhouse, Lian knew very well that if something was really wrong with his innate spiritual root, he would not be able to live. On the contrary, Ji Yu-chun looked very well as he stood in front of him. Chapter 1917. Impossible, impossible, I'll try again, I can do it, I can definitely do it. I have a green innate spiritual root. It's impossible that I can't sense the heaven and earth spirit energy. Ji Yu-chun took a deep breath and suppressed the rising panic within him. He felt as though he was going crazy as he tried to calm himself down so he could try and sense the heaven and earth spirit energy in the Tertius house. Due to the reason there were 3 spirit gathering formations in the Tertius house, the heaven and earth spirit energy in there was richer than it was outside. Even then, Ji Yu-chun could not sense any heaven and earth spirit energy no matter how hard he tried. It felt as though he was in a room devoid of heaven and earth spirit energy. Something must be wrong. Continue. Ji Yu-chun began to panic again. He gritted his teeth and continued trying to sense the heaven and earth spirit energy. Although he could not be considered as a genius, he was still above ordinary people since he possessed a green innate spiritual root. With that, he had a high chance of breaking through to the Saint Celestial stage in the future. At that time, if he was willing to stay in the fire worship sect, he might even become a bronze flame elder. Ji Yu-chun did not doubt that his future was bright prior to this. However, at this moment, despair began to rise in his heart. Found it. At the moment when Ji Yu-chun was about to give up in despair, he sensed the heaven and earth spirit energy and tried to guide it into his body. After a while, he was shocked. Not only was the heaven and earth spirit energy that he sensed extremely weak, but his speed when he guided the heaven and earth spirit energy into his body was extremely slow as well. It was slower than a tortoise. Impossible, I'm a martial cultivator with a green innate spiritual root. This can't be my speed of absorbing heaven and earth spirit energy. Even someone with a red innate spiritual root wouldn't be so slow when sensing and absorbing the heaven and earth spirit energy. Ji Yu-chun began to panic again. He continued to struggle with detecting in the heaven and earth spirit energy. However, a day went by, 2 days went by. After 3 days and 3 nights had gone by, he discovered his speed of detecting and absorbing the heaven and earth spirit energy was still so slow. Bang! A loud bang resonated in the air as Ji Yu-chun destroyed the door of the Tertius house when he went out. He seemed to have gone crazy, and it naturally attracted many people's attention. What's wrong with Ji Yu-chun? Look at him, he looks crazy. He didn't go crazy, did he? It does seem like he has gone crazy. Why is he going to the pool? Soon after, the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples discovered Ji Yu-chun, who seemed like he had gone crazy, was making his way to the pool nearby. He stopped by the side of the pool and lied on the ground. Then he lifted his head to look in the pool as though there was a treasure in there. Naturally, everyone knew there was no treasure in the pool. Even if there was, it would have been taken away by other people a long time ago. It would not stay there, waiting for Ji Yu-chun to pick it up. Upon seeing the familiar face reflected in the pool, Ji Yu-chun became agitated again. He looked like he had gone crazy as he muttered to himself, "I'm still me. That's right, I'm still me, but why is my speed in sensing and absorbing the heaven and earth spirit energy so slow? Even someone with a red innate spiritual root wouldn't be so slow. What happened? Why is this happening to me?" Initially, he had thought his soul had entered the body of someone with low innate talent. However, when he looked into the pool, he saw that he was in his body. After a moment, Ji Yu-chun finally managed to calm himself down. After he calmed down, the figure of a handsome young man with dashing brows and bright eyes appeared in his mind. It's him. It must be him. The figure that appeared in his mind was none other than Duan Ling Tian. After he knocked me out, I didn't cultivate for more than 20 days in order to recover. When I began to cultivate today, I discovered my speed in sensing and absorbing the heaven and earth spirit energy is ridiculously slow. Ji Yu-chun thought to himself as he gritted his teeth. Then, he looked for some of the new disciples who were present on the day he was knocked out. He was desperate to find out and understand what had happened that day. Although the new disciples disliked Ji Yu-chun, they did not dare to protest since he was first Silver Flame Elder Li An's disciple. They told him everything they knew. Duan Ling Tian consolidated his territory and blocked everyone's sights before I was knocked out. Ji Yu-chun narrowed his eyes as he began to recall some of the things that had happened after listening to the new disciples. Based on what I remember, I passed out as soon as I saw a flash of golden light. In other words, Duan Ling Tian blocked everyone's sights and knocked me out when he consolidated his territory. It's unnecessary for him to knock me out just to consolidate his territory. I'm sure he planned to do something objectionable, that's why he blocked everyone's sights. He must have something to do with my cultivation speed becoming so slow. Ji Yu-chun thought to himself as a chill ran up his spine. Although he did know what Duan Ling Tian did to him, he could not help but shudder when he thought about it. Moreover, he had a feeling his innate spiritual root had been damaged. Otherwise, why would his cultivation speed become so slow? Why did it seem like he had a very low innate talent? Ji Yu-chun knew this had something to do with innate spiritual root because he knew one had to rely on one's innate spiritual root to sense and absorb the heaven and earth spirit energy. Now that his speed of sensing and absorbing the heaven and earth spirit energy had become so slow, it meant that something was wrong with his innate spiritual root. Naturally, he did not know exactly what was wrong. Even then, he could not help but shudder. He had never heard of a person being able to damage another person's innate spiritual root before. Although a Saint Celestial stage powerhouse could sense the location of a person's innate spiritual root, he would not be able to mess with the person's innate spiritual root without injuring his soul. Ji Yu-chun could sense that his soul was in perfect condition. I hope he didn't destroy my innate spiritual root and has merely put a restriction on it. Otherwise, my life is ruined. Ji Yu-chun secretly prayed in his heart. His eyes gleamed coldly as he thought to himself. Duan Ling Tian, when my cousin is here, I'll make sure you die without a grave. At that time, I'll definitely cut you into 1,000 pieces and let you experience the greatest pain in this world before you die. Not only that, but I won't let your 2 companions go as well. I remember how they look like even though they're not in the Black Turtle Sanctum. I'll make sure they die as long they remain in the fire worship sect. You can only blame them for being your companions. A burning hatred rose in Ji Yu-chun's heart, and it spread like wildfire. At this moment, not only was Ji Yu-chun not sorry he looked for trouble with Duan Ling Tian, but he kept muttering about seeking revenge from Duan Ling Tian. As for his innate spiritual root, he felt that his master, the Black Turtle Sanctum's first Silver Flame Elder Li An, would definitely be able to help him. If you really destroy my innate spiritual root, I won't let your 2 companions die a fast and painless death. I'll cut them up and make them watch as I feed their meat to the dogs. It seemed as though Ji Yu-chun had gone crazy again when he thought about how his innate spiritual root might have been destroyed. I'll look for Master. After a moment, he left the residence of the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple and made his way east to look for his master, Li An. Why are you in such a state? Li An frowned when he saw how anxious and worried Ji Yu-chun was. A hint of unhappiness flashed across his eyes. In all honesty, he would not have accepted a disciple with a green innate spiritual root. However, this person had promised him something he could not refuse. Ji Yu-chun had promised Li An that he would ask his cousin to become Li An's disciple. According to Ji Yu-chun, his cousin had a blue innate spiritual root, and his cultivation base was at the peak of the exemplary saint stage. He was only a step away from breaking through to the quintessential saint stage. His cousin would be coming to the fire worship sect soon. The fire worship sect had a rule stating that whoever possessed blue spiritual roots or higher could enter the sect at any time and become a disciple of the sect. This rule had been around since ancient times. That was why there were so many powerhouses in the fire worship sect. In the fire worship sect, even a golden flame elder would be tempted by a genius disciple with a blue innate spiritual root, let alone Li An who was only a silver flame elder. Li An had been a fire worship sect's silver flame elder for thousands of years. During those years, he had only accepted 3 disciples whom nobody wanted with blue innate spiritual roots. For this reason, when Ji Yu-chun promised to ask his cousin to become his direct disciple, he immediately agreed to Ji Yu-chun's request of becoming his direct disciple. In his opinion, he would only acknowledge Ji Yu-chun's cousin as his disciple. Ji Yu-chun was merely tagging along. "Master, can you please have a look at my innate spiritual root? There seems to be a problem with it." Ji Yu-chun had a panicked expression on his face when he saw Lian. Anxiety filled his heart as well. "Innate spiritual root, how can there be something wrong with it?" Lian said with a frown when he heard Ji Yu-chun's words. He did not do as Ji Yu-chun had requested him. As a Saint Celestial stage powerhouse, Lian knew very well that if something was really wrong with his innate spiritual root, he would not be able to live. On the contrary, Ji Yu-chun looked very well as he stood in front of him. Chapter 1918. Innate spiritual roots were hidden in the soul. Most of the time, even Saint Celestial stage powerhouses who had achieved the 9th form would not be able to touch someone's innate spiritual roots without affecting that person's soul. Once the innate spiritual root was touched, the person's soul might be destroyed. There was a method that would allow one to touch or tamper with innate spiritual roots, but that method only existed in legends. At the very least, Lian had never heard of anyone mastering that kind of technique. "Master, the speed that I sense and absorb the heaven and earth spirit energy now can't even compare to someone with a red innate spiritual root. My innate spiritual root seems to have disappeared. Can you take a look and see if there's a problem with my innate spiritual root?" Ji Yuli explained with a bitter expression on his face when he saw the disbelief on Lian's face. He was burning with anxiety when he finished speaking. "What?" Lian was greatly shocked when he heard Ji Yu-chun's words. He could tell that Ji Yu-chun was not lying. Apart from that, he believed Ji Yu-chun did not dare to lie to him. "Don't block my divine consciousness." Lian snapped as he extended his divine consciousness and guided it into Ji Yu-chun's body before entering his soul. As a Saint Celestial stage powerhouse, Lian could locate the innate spiritual roots with his divine consciousness. However, when his divine consciousness entered Ji Yu-chun's soul, he could not find his innate spiritual root at all even after he searched for it high and low. In the end, he came to a shocking conclusion. Ji Yu-chun's innate spiritual root had disappeared. How did this happen? Lian's widened in disbelief and he had a shock expression on his face as he retracted his divine consciousness. His heart was in chaos as well. He was certain Ji Yu-chun had an innate spiritual root. Not too long ago, he was there when Ji Yu-chun participated in the innate talent assessment and was assessed by the spiritual pearl. He had seen with his own eyes when the spiritual pearl indicated that Ji Yu-chun possessed a green innate spiritual root. However, currently, his divine consciousness could not find Ji Yu-chun's innate spiritual root in his soul at all. There were only two possibilities that something like that would happen. 1. Ji Yu-chun's innate spiritual root was not in his soul but somewhere else. 2. Ji Yu-chun's innate spiritual root had disappeared. In Lian's opinions, these two possibilities were absurd. First of all, he had never heard of anyone whose innate spiritual root was located anywhere else apart from in the soul. Second, he had also never heard of anyone's innate spiritual root disappearing without any rhyme or reason. Moreover, the person's soul was not damaged at all. Ji Yu-chun's expression turned horrified when he saw how surprised Lian was before he fell into a daze. However, he did not dare to disturb Ji Yu-chun. After a long while, he saw Lian still did not regain his senses. He called out weakly, "Master." However, he did not get to finish his sentence. Lian interrupted him. "Try again." When Lian spoke, a spiritual pearl appeared in his hand suddenly. It was the spiritual pearl that was used to test one's innate spiritual root. When Ji Yu-chun saw the spiritual pearl, Ji Yu-chun did not know why but he felt slightly uneasy. An ominous rose in his heart as well. After a while, he gritted his teeth and reached out to put his hand on the spiritual pearl. Then, he held his breath as he stared intently at the spiritual pearl while he waited for the result. The span of 1 breath passed. The span of 2 breaths passed. The span of 3 breaths passed by. After 10 breaths had passed, Ji Yu-chun gasped. Ji Yu-chun was shocked when he realized the spiritual pearl did not react at all even after 10 breaths had passed. "Master, this is," Ji Yu-chun thought the spiritual pearl might be broken. However, when he saw Lian putting his hand on the spiritual pearl, and after 10 breaths, a light began to emit from the spiritual pearl, horror dawned on him immediately. Ji Yu-chun seemed to realize what was happening as he roared inwardly, "No! Impossible, impossible, impossible." If I'm not mistaken, your innate spiritual root is gone. Lian said as Ji Yu-chun was roaring in his heart. He sentenced Ji Yu-chun's innate spiritual root to death immediately with his words. Boom! Li An's words killed the last shred of hope in Ji Yu-chun's heart. It caused his body to turn weak and collapse on the ground. Why is it like this? Why is this happening to me? My innate spiritual root is gone. It's over. It's over. Ji Yu-chun cried out in a low voice as he lay on the ground. He had a dismal expression on his face, and his eyes were filled with unwillingness. What happened to your innate spiritual root? How can it just disappear? Ji Yu-chun only began to calm down when he heard Li An's words. When he calmed down, Duan Ling Tian's face appeared in his mind again. He said through clenched teeth, "It's Duan Ling Tian. It's him. He's the one who destroyed my innate spiritual root." He was shouting when he reached the end of his sentence. Originally, Lian thought Ji Yu Li had met with a mishap that caused him to lose his innate spiritual root. However, he realized he was wrong when he heard Ji Yu-chun's words. Horror dawned on his face as he asked in disbelief, "Duan Ling Tian? It's him. He's the one who destroyed my innate spiritual root." Ji Yu-chun roared. He charged forward and hugged Li An's legs as though Lian was his last hope. "Master, you must avenge me. You must seek revenge for me. I want Duan Ling Tian dead. I want him dead. I want to cut him into thousands of pieces and have his bones ground into dust. I want to catch his 2 companions so I can feed their meat to the dogs." Ji Yu-chun continued to howl. It was as though he was venting the pain he felt from losing his innate spiritual root. Losing one's innate spiritual root meant one could no longer walk on the cultivation path. His innate talent was currently worse than someone with a red innate spiritual root. He was destined to stay at the early exemplary saint stage, no longer be able to progress. How could he accept this? What happened? Tell me, Lian asked in a low voice. He did not speak loudly, but the magic in his voice managed to overpower Ji Yu-chun's howling and shouting. It caused Ji Yu-chun to fall silent. "Master, Duan Ling Tian," Ji Yu-chun began to recount what had happened to Lian, including the things he learned from the new disciples. He even told him about him passing out. He went out of his way to block other people's sights. It's obvious he's up to no good. It must have something to do with the disappearance of my innate spiritual root. Ji Yu-chun said through clenched teeth after he finished recounting what had happened. What you said is not entirely without sense. It seems like the disappearance of your innate spiritual root has something to do with Duan Ling Tian. Li An's eyes gleamed coldly as he emitted a killing intent. "Master, you must seek revenge for me," Ji Yu-chun begged sorrowfully as he looked at Ji Yu-chun with anticipation in his eyes. "Don't worry. If we can confirm Duan Ling Tian destroyed your innate spiritual root, he'll definitely die." Lian replied coldly. "Isn't it obvious?" When Ji Yu-chun heard Lian said that they needed confirmation about this matter, he could not help but frown. As soon as he finished speaking, he felt as though he had turned lighter. As it turned out, Lian had brought him flying to the western area of the Black Turtle Sanctum where the disciples stayed. Although there was still a distance to go before Lian arrived at the residence of the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple, he yelled angrily, "Duan Ling Tian." His angry voice was filled with a rolling energy that swept out quickly. In just a blink of an eye, it spread to every nook and cranny in the residence of the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples. All the disciples, including those who were in closed-door cultivation, heard Lian's voice. One by one, the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples walked out of the courteous houses. From afar, they looked like black clouds. There were at least several thousands of them. Meanwhile, many Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples from the Tertius house also began to come out. There were several hundreds of them. Apart from that, several dozens of people from the Secundus house also came out. There were no movements at all in the Primus houses that were located at the top. What happened? Who did Duan Ling Tian offend this time? This voice sounds a little familiar. No. Li An's had spoken in the distance, so he had not appeared yet. For this reason, the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples were puzzled. A Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple who walked out of a Tertius house seemed to recall something. His eyes brightened as he exclaimed, "I know that voice. It's Elder Li An's voice." Although his voice was not loud, many people still heard his words. 1 spread to 10, 10 spread to 100, and 100 spread to 1,000. After a few moments, all Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples who came out to have a look learned who the voice belonged to. It was none other than Lian, the first Silver Flame Elder in the Black Turtle Sanctum. Li Yan's position was only inferior to the sanctum leader in the Black Turtle Sanctum. What did Duan Lingtian do this time? Elder Li Yan even personally came here. Many Black Turtle Sanctum's senior disciples looked at each other in shock. They did not expect this new disciple would be so bold. He had just entered the Black Turtle Sanctum not long ago, but he had offended their first Silver Flame Elder Li Yan again and again. The fact that Elder Li Yan personally came here means it's not a small issue. It seems like Duan Lingtian is doomed. Many Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples agreed with these words. After a while, under the watchful eyes of the others, Li Yan appeared with Ji Yu Chun. Li Yan let go of Ji Yu Chun, and Ji Yu Chun followed him from behind. As Ji Yu Chun stood behind Li Yan, his eyes were staring intently at one of the thousands of Tertius houses. His gaze was filled with a burning hatred. The Tertius house naturally belonged to Duan Lingtian, the person he could not wait to kill. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian, who was on the 4th level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, was also alerted by Li Yan's arrival. Li Yan. Chapter 1919. What's he doing here? Duan Lingtian frowned when he heard Li Yan and stopped comprehending the divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier. Currently, he had already spent 6 months comprehending the Black Turtle's Barrier in the 4th level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. However, he only managed to scratch the surface of it despite trying to comprehend it for 6 months. Perhaps, his progress would satisfy many of the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples, but it was not good enough for him. Previously, when he comprehended the 2 high-grade divine abilities, the Elementary Devouring Tactic and Otherworldly Celestial, it did not take long for him to comprehend and master them. However, he had spent 6 months comprehending the Black Turtle's Barrier, but he did not make much progress. It was only natural that he felt dissatisfied and unhappy. No one knew how much progress Duan Lingtian had made with the Black Turtle's Barrier. Otherwise, the disciples who were diligently comprehending the Black Turtle's Barrier but did not make any progress would be so jealous that their eyes might even turn red. If they could read Duan Lingtian's thoughts, they would probably feel like kicking him a few times to vent their anger. It seems like this concerns the matter with Ji Yu Chun. Duan Lingtian suddenly remembered the matter concerning Ji Yu Chun, and he managed to guess the reason Li Yan had come looking for him in anger. This was the only plausible reason. Although Duan Lingtian knew why Li Yan had come to look for him, he did not look worried at all. He was calm. Swish. With just a thought, he left the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. After he put away the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, he opened the door and walked out of the Tertius house. The moment he walked out of the Tertius house, he discovered thousands of eyes looking at him. It was obvious he was the focus of everyone's attention. Among all the eyes that were looking at him, 2 pairs of eyes felt a little different. The eyes were cold and filled with killing intent. Before he even turned around to look at them, he already knew to whom those eyes belonged to. It had to be Li Yan and his disciple, Ji Yu Chun. It was easy for him to guess to whom those eyes belonged to because apart from Li Yan and his disciple, he had no enmity with other people in the Black Turtle Sanctum. The Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples looked at Duan Lingtian sympathetically. Elder Li Yan, is there a reason you came looking for me? Duan Lingtian rose in the air and stood near Li Yan. He looked at Li Yan calmly as though he did not know what was wrong. The Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples were shocked when they saw how calm Duan Lingtian was. Li Yan's eyes turned cold as he shouted, Duan Lingtian, how dare you? His voice was thunderous, frightening the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples who were watching. Some Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples with lower cultivation were so shocked that they paled immediately. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian, the party involved, remained calm from the beginning until the end. His expression remained unchanged even when Li Yan shouted, he did not even bat an eye. Duan Lingtian seems to have angered Elder Li Yan. I've been in the Black Turtle Sanctum for 6 years now, this is my first time seeing Elder Li Yan so angry, I really can't figure out what Duan Lingtian has done to anger him to this point. We'll find out if we continue to watch. Many Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples whispered among themselves as they watched the scene unfolding before their eyes. They knew this was going to be a good show. Elder Li Yan, what do you mean? I'm sorry, but I don't understand, Duan Lingtian asked with a frown. He had a confused expression on his face. Before Li Yan could reply, Ji Yu Chun who stood behind him shouted, Duan Lingtian, stop acting. You destroyed my innate spiritual root, but you're acting dumb now. I destroyed your innate spiritual root. A bewildered expression appeared on Duan Lingtian's face when he heard Ji Yu Chun's words. Then, he looked at Ji Yu-chun before smirking coldly. Ji Yu-chun, if you're going to make accusations, you should at least come up with a better story, right? How can I destroy your innate spiritual root? Do you think that's something I'm capable of doing? Do you think we're all idiots, or do you think Elder Lian is an idiot? Duan Lingtian looked at Ji Yu-chun as though he was looking at an idiot. Ji Yu-chun became even more angered when he saw Duan Lingtian refusing to admit what he had done. What angered him even more was, apart from Duan Lingtian looking at him as though he was an idiot, even the thousands of Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples were looking at him as though he was an idiot as well. Ji Yu-chun said that Duan Lingtian destroyed his innate spiritual root. What a joke! Who doesn't know that innate spiritual roots are hidden in the soul? If one touches the innate spiritual root, one would inevitably touch the soul as well. Even a Saint Celestial stage powerhouse can't destroy another person's innate spiritual root without destroying that person's soul. He should come up with a better story. Does Ji Yu-chun think we're all stupid like him? Even if he wants to accuse Duan Lingtian of something, he should have come up with something more believable. He's really bold. To think Elder Lian personally came for this. Don't tell me he believes Ji Yu-chun's story. The Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples discussed among themselves. Based on their discussion, it could be seen that none of them believed Ji Yu-chun's words at all, since it defied everything they knew. Apart from that, many of them also looked at Lian with a strange gaze. Lian was a Silver Flame Elder in the Black Turtle Sanctum. For this reason, the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples did not dare to say much about him. This was about Duan Lingtian alone after all. There was no benefit for them if they spoke up for him. Although they did not dare to speak up in front of Elder Lian, some Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples began to discuss among themselves through voice transmission. If Elder Lian really believes Ji Yu-chun, then he must be an idiot like Ji Yu-chun. I don't think Elder Lian believes Ji Yu-chun. If he doesn't believe him, why would he come looking for Duan Lingtian in anger as though he means to seek revenge from him? Perhaps, he just wants a good excuse to get rid of Duan Lingtian. Although we know it's impossible for Duan Lingtian to destroy Ji Yu-chun's innate spiritual root, Elder Lian can use this reason and frame him. If he's found guilty, he would be considered as breaking the rules of the fire worship sect, since it's maliciously harming a disciple of the sect. That's right, why didn't I think of this? If he can push the blame to Duan Lingtian, he'll be able to kill Duan Lingtian. Elder Lian is really ruthless. Many discussions carried through voice transmission were similar in thought. Many of the disciples looked at Lian in fear when they discovered how ruthless the first Silver Flame Elder of Black Turtle Sanctum was. This Silver Flame Elder would stop at nothing to achieve what he wanted. Then, they shifted their eyes to Duan Lingtian. Their eyes were filled with sympathy. Many people sighed inwardly. They did not think Duan Lingtian would be able to survive today. Duan Lingtian, Lian said under the watchful eyes of the others. His voice was cold as he said, I know you won't admit to destroying my disciple's innate spiritual root. However, it's true that Ji Yu-chun has lost his innate spiritual root. This has also been confirmed by Lord Sanctum Leader. His eyes glinted coldly when he reached the end of his sentence. His words shocked the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples. They did not expect Lian would bring up the Sanctum Leader of Black Turtle Sanctum. The Sanctum Leader was the strongest person in the Black Turtle Sanctum. If Lian lied, it would be equivalent to him dishonoring the Sanctum Leader. If that was the case, the Sanctum Leader would not let Lian go. Due to this reason, they realized Lian was telling the truth. Ji Yu-chun really did lose his innate spiritual root. How is this possible? I haven't heard of anyone surviving after their innate spiritual roots are destroyed. However, since Elder Lian dared to mention Lord Sanctum Leader, it has to be true. What's going on? Don't tell me Duan Lingtian really destroyed Ji Yu-chun's innate spiritual root. The Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples whispered among themselves again as they shifted their eyes to Duan Lingtian as fear rose in their hearts. One must admit that as the first Silver Flame Elder of the Black Turtle Sanctum, Lian had many tricks up his sleeve. With just a few sentences, he managed to change the public's opinion. Even if Duan Lingtian was unwilling, he had to admit Lian was dealing with the matter in a brilliant way. Elder Lian, since you mentioned Lord Sanctum Leader, I have no choice but to believe Ji Yu-chun has lost his innate spiritual root despite my unwillingness. Duan Lingtian looked at Lian as the disciples looked at him and said solemnly, I believe Elder Lian won't use Lord Sanctum Leader's name so recklessly. Lord Sanctum Leader is the master of Black Turtle Sanctum. Naturally, I won't use his name casually. Moreover, I don't have the courage to do such things. Li Yan smirked. If he did not need a good excuse to kill Duan Lingtian, he would not waste so many words with Duan Lingtian. Even then, what proof do you have that I destroyed Ji Yuchun's innate spiritual root, Elder Li Yan? Duan Lingtian's expression was still as calm as ever. Based on my knowledge, Saint Celestial stage powerhouses are above can probe and sense someone's innate spiritual root. With my current cultivation base, it's impossible for me to probe or detect one's innate spiritual root, let alone destroying an innate spiritual root. Chapter 1920. Put aside my cultivation base that doesn't allow me to use my divine consciousness to probe and locate the innate spiritual root. Even if I can locate and probe someone's innate spiritual root, do you really think that I can destroy Ji Yuchun's innate spiritual root and leave him unharmed? As far as I know, even a Saint Celestial powerhouse at the 9th form won't be able to guarantee he would be able to leave someone's soul unharmed if he destroys that person's innate spiritual root. Duan Lingtian said confidently, leaving no room for doubts since his words were reasonable. After he finished speaking, before Li Yan could speak, he continued to say with righteous indignation, Elder Li Yan, I know you resent me and want to seek revenge from me for killing the son of your best friend, 5th Elder Yang Chong of the Northern Plethora sect. If you want to seek revenge from me, you can just kill me. Is there a need for you to come up with such an absurd story just to kill me? Swoosh. Li Yan's expression turned grave immediately. He did not expect Duan Lingtian would say such a thing in front of so many people. Upon sensing the several thousands of eyes that were looking at him strangely, he discovered Duan Lingtian had turned the situation around and now he was placed in a disadvantageous position. You, Li Yan said with a grave expression on his face. However, before he could finish his sentence, Duan Lingtian interrupted him. Although I don't know if your direct disciple, Ji Yuchun, really lost his innate spiritual root or not, you should have killed him first before you come here and accuse me of destroying his innate spiritual root. Perhaps, people might be more inclined to believe your accusations, Elder Li Yan. Duan Lingtian's words seemed as though he was advising Li Yan, but in truth, he was mocking Li Yan. Li Yan's expression turned even graver when he heard this. His eyes that were staring at Duan Lingtian looked as though they were about to shoot fire. If looks could kill, Duan Lingtian would have died several times over. The thousands of Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples present on the scene nodded when they heard Duan Lingtian's words. That was right. If Li Yan had killed Ji Yuchun before looking for Duan Lingtian and sought revenge from him by accusing him of this, perhaps, they would have believed Li Yan. Li Yan accused Duan Lingtian of destroying Ji Yuchun's innate spiritual root, but Ji Yuchun was still alive. This was undoubtedly a terrible plan to deal with Duan Lingtian. It would have been a better plan if he had killed Ji Yuchun before he accused Duan Lingtian. However, Li Yan did not think to use the better plan and chose the terrible plan instead. Was this not an insult to their intelligence? Although they were merely bystanders, they were not dumb. They were still able to differentiate between lies and truths. Duan Lingtian, what nonsense are you spouting? Ji Yuchun shouted as his expression turned grave when he saw Duan Lingtian had taken the righteous route and turned the public's opinion against his master. He was angry and humiliated. You're the one who destroyed my innate spiritual root. If it's not you, why did you use your territory to block other people from seeing what you're doing at that time? Doesn't that show you're guilty? The Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples were baffled when they heard Ji Yuchun's words. Some of them had witnessed the fight between Duan Lingtian and Ji Yuchun that day. Duan Lingtian did indeed block their sight using his territory, causing them to be unable to see what was happening. All of them did not know what Duan Lingtian was doing inside his territory. Could it be that Duan Lingtian really destroyed Ji Yuchun's innate spiritual root? Many of the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples who were present at that time felt their hearts wavered again. Before Duan Lingtian could respond, Ji Yuchun continued saying, moreover, I dare to swear on the lightning penalty oath that my innate spiritual root has been destroyed. As Ji Yuchun spoke, he pricked his finger as a drop of blood floated into the sky. After that, he said loudly, if my innate spiritual root is not destroyed, I'm willing to be killed by the 9 heavenly tribulation. Boom, 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 boom. 9 claps of thunder reverberated in the air, completing the lightning penalty oath. However, Ji Yuchun was not struck by lightning. It was proof that he was not lying when he said his innate spiritual root had been destroyed. The Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples present on the scene no longer doubted him when they saw this. It's really destroyed. Many of the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples were sure Ji Yuchun's innate spiritual root had been destroyed. He and his master, Lian, were not lying after all. I've already sworn on the lightning penalty that my innate spiritual root has been destroyed. After swearing by the thunder penalty oath, Ji Yuchun shifted his sharp gaze to Duan Lingtian before he said coldly, Duan Lingtian, do you dare to swear on the lightning penalty oath that you did not destroy my innate spiritual root? As soon as he finished speaking, he stepped forward and stood next to Lian as he stared coldly at Duan Lingtian. Do you dare? Everyone instantly shifted their attention to Duan Lingtian. Do you think Duan Lingtian dares to swear on the lightning penalty oath? I think he will. After all, it's not possible for him to destroy Ji Yuchun's innate spiritual root with his cultivation base. What if he doesn't dare to do it? Well, doesn't that mean he's guilty? Although the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples found it hard to believe Duan Lingtian was able to destroy Ji Yuchun's innate spiritual root, they could not help but feel skeptical when they saw how sure Ji Yuchun was. Under normal circumstances, if Ji Yuchun was so bold as to stand next to Lian in front of so many people, Lian would have gotten angry and scolded Ji Yuchun for not knowing his place. However, at this moment, not only was Lian not angry, but he even secretly praised the direct disciple he was not fond of for being smart. His disciples' actions had made the public wavered. It had helped them escape from the disadvantageous position they were in. This pleased him a lot. He felt the stifling feeling in heart disappearing. At this moment, he even felt this disciple of his was a lot more pleasing to his eyes. Swear on the lightning penalty oath that I didn't cripple your innate spiritual root. Under the watchful eyes of the others, Duan Lingtian smiled as he said, Ji Yuchun, don't you think it's unnecessary for me to swear on the lightning penalty oath? Why, are you afraid? Ji Yuchun smirked. If you don't dare to do it, doesn't that mean you're guilty? You're indirectly admitting that you destroyed my innate spiritual root. By destroying my innate spiritual root, you're essentially cutting off my cultivation path. What's the difference from maiming me? According to the law of fire worship sect, I'm sure you know what punishments would be given to those who maliciously harm the disciples of the sect, right? When Ji Yuchun was speaking, a terrifying aura rose up from Lian's body. The aura quietly locked Duan Lingtian in place. He was ready to punish Duan Lingtian. I think you're the one who doesn't dare to. Duan Lingtian's words made the terrifying aura on from Lian's body to disappear. Lian stared at Duan Lingtian intently. He did not understand what Duan Lingtian meant. I don't dare. What is it that I don't dare to do? Duan Lingtian, don't even think of changing the topic with so many people watching, Ji Yuchun said disdainfully. I've already said it's unnecessary for me to swear on the lightning penalty oath. Since you keep insisting I'm the one who destroyed your innate spiritual root, you can always swear on the lightning penalty oath that I'm the one who destroyed your innate spiritual root and you're willing to be struck by lightning. If you die, then it means I'm the one who destroyed your innate spiritual root. If lightning did not strike you, then it means I did not destroy your innate spiritual root, and you're just making baseless accusations. Duan Lingtian said with a calm expression and looked at Ji Yuchun as the thousands of Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples looked at him with confusion. His statement was flawless. Ji Yuchun told him to swear on the lightning penalty oath. It was within his right to ask Ji Yuchun to swear on the lightning penalty as well. The oath they had to swear was the same. Both would be able to tell if Duan Lingtian really did destroy Ji Yuchun's innate spiritual root. The only difference was the person making the oath. Swish. Horror dawned on Ji Yuchun. He had used all means to turn things in his favor. It did not cross his mind that Duan Lingtian would use such a method to counter his words. Duan Lingtian had asked him to swear on the lightning penalty oath. Although the oath's content was the same, he did not dare to swear on it at all. This was because he had only assumed Duan Lingtian was the one who destroyed his innate spiritual root. Even if he was 99% certain Duan Lingtian was the culprit, there was still that 1% of doubt. This concerned his life. Even if it's just 1% of doubt, he did not dare to gamble his life at all. For this reason, he did not dare to swear on the lightning penalty oath. Duan Lingtian, I've already sworn on the lightning penalty oath. It's your turn to swear on the lightning penalty oath. Now that things had escalated to this point, Ji Yuchun could only continue on insisting that Duan Lingtian swear on the lightning penalty oath. What a lame argument. Duan Lingtian smirked when Ji Yuchun finished speaking. Ji Yuchun, from the beginning until the end, you're the one who brought up swearing on the lightning penalty oath. Now that the problem can be solved by one of us swearing on the lightning penalty oath, don't you think you should be the one to swear an oath since you brought it up first? Why should I swear an oath? It can't be that you don't dare to swear an oath because you know I didn't destroy your innate spiritual root. The smirk on Duan Lingtian's face widened when he finished speaking. Duan Lingtian was gambling with his life when he told Ji Yuchun to swear on the lightning penalty oath. If he lost the bet, he would die. If he won, he would live. He bet that Ji Yuchun would not dare to swear on the lightning penalty oath. Naturally, Duan Lingtian only dared to make this bet because he was absolutely certain Ji Yuchun was unaware of him devouring his innate spiritual root and was merely making an assumption. He did not have any proof at all. He had nothing to his advantage when he told Ji Yuchun to swear on the lightning penalty oath.